He was born frail and powerless, but after being taken under the wing of the strongest double S-rank magician, he dedicated himself fully to training. Through sheer determination, he pushed himself relentlessly, his hands bruised, his body battered, yet his spirit remained unbreakable. Years later, that same boy who once couldn't even cast the simplest of spells became someone feared across the land. But even his powerful master had no idea that hidden deep within him was a dark magic capable of rattling the very foundations of the world. Everything starts in the ruins of a destroyed city, where a mysterious woman discovers a young boy named Lloyd, standing motionless, fixated on something unseen. Although it remains unclear exactly what he's staring at, the woman instinctively knows one thing for certain. If this child joins her cause, she can finally defeat the demon lord and claim victory. Setting aside her doubts, she gently embraces Lloyd, who remains completely lost in thought. Soon after, the woman brings Lloyd back to her home and immediately demonstrates her magic by conjuring fire directly from her hands. Lloyd's eyes widen in disbelief because this is something completely unimaginable for him. Despite that, the woman orders him to mimic her feat, threatening that if he can't manage it, he'll have to skip dinner. Without any guidance, knowledge, or experience, Lloyd pushes himself to try, and by nightfall, he miraculously manages to summon a small flame. Although slightly impressed, the woman insists it's nowhere near good enough, and to prove her point, she engulfs him in flames, insisting he still has a very long road ahead. The following morning, she decides to teach Lloyd water magic by showing him how to strike the ground in a specific manner. Lloyd manages it on his first try, but only succeeds in soaking the dirt beneath him, failing to meet her expectations again. Disappointed, she punishes him by drenching him completely in a pool of water. Later, she introduces him to wine magic, and as their rigorous training continues, Lloyd masters ice magic within just a few short months. Eager to impress his strict master, he proudly creates a perfect ice sculpture resembling her, certain he's finally done enough to earn her approval. But again, she remains unimpressed. Believing Lloyd still doesn't grasp the vast difference in their power, she decides to give him a demonstration. Using her own magic, she animates the statue he created, causing it to grab Lloyd tightly, and then dramatically enlarges it before shattering it to pieces right in front of him. Witnessing firsthand his master's immense power, Lloyd's determination only intensifies, motivating him to continue training relentlessly. Then one evening, she overdoses on the booze and wakes up sick as a dog. Lloyd surprises her by healing her instantly, revealing that he has also learned healing magic through her instruction. Grateful, she warmly hugs him for helping her, yet quickly regains her stern composure, reminding him that he's still nowhere near her level. And without missing a beat, she commands him to immediately return to his magical training. After several more months of intense training, Lloyd's master is seen anxiously holding a mysterious grimoire. Something clearly troubles her, and when Lloyd suddenly enters the room, she's so startled that the book slips from her grasp. Lloyd quickly picks it up for her, but as soon as he touches the grimoire, something triggers deep inside him, causing him to collapse unconscious. Seeing this, his master immediately realizes Lloyd could actually become a chosen one himself. From the way she talks, it almost sounds as though she might be one too, although I can't be completely sure. Either way, she's deeply concerned that Lloyd might repeat her own mistakes. Wanting to protect him from becoming overly confident and reckless like she did, she gently kisses his forehead while he's asleep, casting a subtle spell, probably one meant to limit his power. The following morning, she introduces Lloyd to a new concept called a white mage. According to his master, Lloyd is naturally suited to becoming a white mage, the kind of magician who typically uses magic to help and benefit others. To put this into practice, she assigns him the simple task of using his healing abilities on an apple tree, making one apple larger. Lloyd succeeds, but his master quickly demonstrates how she can effortlessly cover the entire tree in apples, reminding him how far he still has to go. Later that night, during his regular magic lessons, Lloyd becomes intrigued when he stumbles across a phrase called ancient magic. But his master quickly dismisses his curiosity, insisting he shouldn't concern himself with magic that disappeared centuries ago. Instead, she begins teaching him more advanced spells, including space magic, which allows him to freely summon or unsummon objects whenever he pleases. Eventually, believing Lloyd is ready to face even tougher challenges, his master blindfolds him and takes him into an unfamiliar forest filled with monsters. She hands him nothing more than a tiny kitchen knife, instructs him to survive using only his magic, and gives him a single week to return home. After wishing him luck, she immediately vanishes into thin air, leaving Lloyd utterly terrified and alone. Only moments later, a wolf-like monster emerges from the darkness, chasing Lloyd frantically through the woods. He barely manages to evade it by scrambling up a tall tree, panicking as he tries to figure out what to do next. After calming himself slightly, he uses his space detection skill and pinpoints the location of his master's house far to the north. With no other options, he climbs down and cautiously sets out on foot toward home. When night falls, Lloyd cleverly uses his healing magic to ripen wild fruits for dinner. Finding a small cave to shelter in, he begins carefully drawing out a magic circle that should help increase his physical abilities. Putting his creativity to good use, he adjusts all his known spells to actively boost his physical strength and other base stats whenever he activates them. The following morning, as Lloyd carefully makes his way through the forest, he accidentally stumbles into a queen spider's territory. As soon as the massive spider lunges at him, Lloyd spins around and runs as fast as he can. He quickly activates one of his newly modified spells, increasing his speed tenfold. In one desperate burst, he manages to sprint all the way back to his master's home, collapsing from exhaustion at her doorstep. She casually opens the door, greeting him warmly with a gentle smile and welcoming him back. As more time passes, Lloyd grows taller and more confident, gaining greater freedom around his master's home. One day, while tidying up her study, Lloyd finds a book about cities, instantly capturing his interest since he's never experienced life among other people. Meanwhile, his master begins conducting various experiments, making Lloyd her personal apprentice and barely allowing him a moment of rest for several weeks. On one particular morning, she wakes up and casually heads to the rooftop to start training Lloyd, fully intending to exhaust him until he can barely move. But when she arrives, Lloyd is nowhere to be seen. She notices a book lying open, the very same one Lloyd was last reading, and curiously picks it up. Meanwhile, Lloyd has just arrived in town for the very first time. He walks through the crowded streets, utterly amazed at the sheer number of people and activity around him. Having never experienced anything like this, he's fascinated. After buying a single loaf of bread, Lloyd immediately runs out of money, realizing he'll need a job soon. Just then, an adventurer recruitment poster conveniently blows into his face. Lloyd takes this as a clear sign and decides to apply. But unbeknownst to him, a mysterious figure silently follows Lloyd, quietly intrigued by the young boy's decision. After signing up, Lloyd joins his new adventurer party, and they soon head to the top of a castle to face off against a giant cyclops. Alan, the party leader, urgently calls out to Sheena the healer, asking her to provide him with healing support, but just before Sheena can act, Lloyd discreetly casts his refined stat-boosting spell, making everyone feel stronger than ever before. And because Lloyd didn't announce his actions, no one realizes he's responsible for their newfound strength. With the magical boost, the party's archer effortlessly shoots the Cyclops directly in the eye, and their knight smoothly blocks one of its powerful strikes, utterly shocked at how easy it feels. Alan, oblivious to the sudden power-up he's received, confidently steps forward and easily finishes off the Cyclops with one decisive blow, convinced he did it purely on his own merit. But the knight quietly suspects that Lloyd might have had something to do with their sudden surge in strength. In any case, with the Cyclops finally defeated, the party returns triumphantly to town. Alan is treated like a legendary hero, since apparently no one else has ever managed to take down the Cyclops of Abatov Castle before. Naturally, the reward is huge, but when Alan pays Lloyd, he hands him a measly 5 coins, claiming it's fair because Lloyd's still just a beginner D-ranked adventurer. Lloyd quietly accepts the payment without complaint, but when Alan suggests celebrating their victory with drinks, Lloyd politely declines, mentioning he doesn't drink alcohol. This offends the party's mage, who takes Lloyd's refusal personally, but Alan brushes it off casually, saying they can always find another white mage since Lloyd didn't contribute much anyway. Lloyd overhears the comment but calmly ignores it, quietly closing the door behind him as he walks away. At the same time, back at Merlin's house, the mysterious man who had been watching Lloyd earlier finally arrives. Merlin immediately asks if he has any news about Lloyd. The man, whose name turns out to be Willie, informs her that Lloyd successfully made it to town and joined the hero's adventurer party. Merlin breathes a sigh of relief upon hearing Lloyd is safe. She felt it was finally time for him to explore and experience life outside, and believes he'll do well as long as he avoids becoming overly confident like she was in her younger days. Willie gently asks if she's still haunted by the events from that day, and Merlin's expression darkens with guilt and regret as the painful memory returns. Back then, the demon lord had surprised everyone by willingly blowing himself up to seize control of the magic grimoire, something Merlin never anticipated. The resulting explosion completely wiped out an entire village, instantly killing everyone in the area, including Merlin herself. Fortunately, her party member Sybil sacrificed himself by using a forbidden ancient magic spell to revive everyone who died. Ever since, Merlin has carried immense guilt over causing Sybil's death and putting her friends in danger. Back in town, Lloyd remains with Alan's party, consistently providing subtle but powerful buffs every time the others struggle in battle. Thanks to Lloyd's secret assistance, the party maintains an impressive winning streak, performing at peak levels, though none of them recognize that Lloyd is the real reason behind their success. Later that evening, Rena sits in her room reading a book about defense strategies when Alan casually walks in, curious about what she's doing. She explains that she's been trying to understand why monsters' attacks have suddenly become easier to withstand. Alan admits he's also noticed a significant increase in his own strength recently, but he proudly attributes it to his own abilities. But Rina points out that Alan hasn't trained seriously in a while, so there's no logical reason why he should suddenly be stronger. At the same time out in the forest, a patrol of town guards finishes their usual rounds when suddenly, one of them cries out in agony. The other guard spins around to see a towering golem looming over his partner. In that terrifying moment, he realizes he's about to lose his shit life over a damn low-paying patrol job. The following day, the captain of the guard meets Alan urgently, pleading for assistance. He explains that the patrolmen from last night were brutally slaughtered by a golem, so Alan confidently agrees to help out, assuming it'll be a simple job to defeat a mere golem. Later in the day, Alan's team heads out to the crime scene. Thanks to Lloyd's tracking magic, they're able to quickly pinpoint the golem's hideout, a cave hidden behind a waterfall. With Lloyd secretly boosting everyone's abilities, defeating the golem turns out to be a simple task. However, none of them notice a hidden demon lurking nearby, quietly creating another golem out of rocks in the cave ceiling. Lloyd is the first to spot the demon and notices it's controlling the golem using a staff embedded with a magic stone. Knowing how dangerous magic stones can be, Lloyd decides to step up quickly to prevent a disaster. He casts an accuracy buff on Lulu, urgently instructing her to fire an arrow at the demon. Lulu hesitates slightly, confused because the demon is partially hidden behind a wall, but she trusts Lloyd's call and fires anyway, and somehow her shot hits its mark perfectly. Lloyd then immediately instructs their mage Mia to teleport the demon's staff into his hands, and the moment she does, he swiftly casts a sealing spell to disable its dangerous powers. Alan grows furious, annoyed that Lloyd is suddenly giving orders when he's supposed to be the leader. Determined to prove himself, Alan recklessly charges forward to deliver the finishing blow to the golem. Seeing the obvious danger, Lloyd quickly casts a speed-enhancing spell on himself, rushes ahead, and shoves Alan out of harm's way just before the golem can crush his sorry ass. Instead of gratitude, Alan lashes out angrily at Lloyd, accusing him of interfering unnecessarily. After Alan finally defeats the golem, they return to town, and Alan harshly kicks Lloyd out of the group, claiming he's tired of his attitude. He unjustly accuses Lloyd of being lazy and contributing nothing meaningful to their victories. Unfortunately, years of Merlin repeatedly insisting he was inadequate leaves Lloyd convinced that he's the problem. Accepting Alan's decision without arguing, Lloyd quietly leaves the team. Over the next few days, he searches desperately for a new party, but struggles because most groups are full and white mages aren't considered valuable. Just when Lloyd starts losing hope, a girl named Yu urgently needs a white mage. As she asks the guild receptionist for help, the attendant immediately suggests Lloyd. Yu then turns to Lloyd, urgently asks if he's currently available, and when he confirms that, she instantly grabs his hand and excitedly pulls him along, rushing out of the guild hall together. Just a bit earlier, Lloyd was roaming aimlessly through town, still miserable after being booted from Alan's group. Alan's cutting insults kept replaying in his mind, calling him a useless white mage who did nothing but hide behind his allies, whose only skill was healing, and even then Sheena could outperform him easily. When Lloyd quietly asks if that's really how Alan sees him, Alan dismisses him coldly, telling him to just get lost already. As Lloyd walks away, he overhears the girls, except Rina, loudly cheering, clearly relieved that the dead weight is finally gone. Later, Lloyd ends up at the town center, near a large fountain with a statue on top. Looking closely, he realizes it resembles his master perfectly, which deepens his sense of loneliness even more. Elsewhere, a squad of adventurers approaches a bandit hideout to begin their raid. It's an A-ranked mission, so they're moving carefully. One of them, a redhead named Clum, seems particularly unhappy about something and lacks enthusiasm. Still, they launch their surprise attack swiftly, not giving the bandits a chance to fight back. The mage in their team named Silica loudly begins chanting her spell, and one of the bandits cleverly instructs the others to wait until she's finished chanting before striking. The bandits rush forward right as Silica exhausts herself, believing they found an opening. However, Cross, the team's sharp-eyed archer, swiftly takes them all out with a single precise arrow. Their team proved perfectly balanced. Even their swordswoman and leader Yu holds her own easily. When Yu briefly loses her footing, the team's tank Dagus quickly jumps in to shield her. At the same time, Clum boosts Dagus's physical abilities with her magic, helping him effortlessly overwhelm the bandits. The bandit leader, realizing they're hopelessly outmatched, tries to sneak away, only to be cornered by Yu, who orders him to surrender quietly. Confused and desperate, the boss demands to know who the hell she is and why they randomly attacked. But as he yells, he suddenly notices the shiny golden badge around her neck, marking her as an S-ranked adventurer. In fact, the entire party wears the same rank, making him realize he's definitely messed with the wrong crew. The boss bandit has one final ace up his sleeve, confident that even these S-ranked adventurers won't stand a chance against what's about to show up. He grips his staff tight, casting a summoning spell that causes a giant golem to burst out of the ground. Facing something like this, magic becomes useless, instantly leaving Clum and Silica unable to help. Cross, their skilled archer, quickly realizes even his arrows won't scratch the monster, leaving only Yu and Dagas able to stand against it. Yu, as their fearless leader, takes charge without hesitation, sprinting forward and slamming her sword against the golem with all her might, but the monster shrugs it off effortlessly, barely even scratched. Clum, the white mage, still distracted by something, doesn't even hear when Yu desperately calls for her help. Finally, frustrated and worried, Yu shouts Clum's name loud enough to snap her back into reality. Clum, flustered but realizing the situation, quickly casts a strength enhancement spell, boosting Yu's power significantly. With renewed energy and at least 5 times her normal strength, Yu slices through the massive golem, ending the fight instantly. After finishing the job and capturing all the bandits, including their defeated boss, Yu gently approaches Clum, concerned about her earlier distraction. Clum softly apologizes, visibly upset, saying she no longer feels like she deserves to call herself an adventurer. Yu's eyes soften as she understands Clum's struggle. Realizing it's connected to her sister Sylvie, she kindly asks Clum how Sylvie has been doing lately. But before Clum can respond, the scene cuts to Lloyd, who's currently still feeling hopeless on his 3rd day without finding a new party. Just then, Lloyd overhears someone yelling loudly at the guild counter, desperately needing a white mage, and to his surprise, it's Yui. Without missing a beat, Lloyd gathers his courage and quickly volunteers. Yu doesn't even pause to ask about his qualifications, immediately grabbing Lloyd's hand and practically dragging him back to their team's base. There she proudly introduces Lloyd to the confused group, enthusiastically welcoming him without even officially confirming if he wants to join. Her teammates aren't surprised. This impulsiveness is typical Yui. Cross sighs apologetically and explains to Lloyd that the reason for their desperate hurry is a critical quest they can't tackle without Clum. However, the whole team quietly doubts Lloyd can truly fill Clum's shoes, and Lloyd himself feels the intense pressure, especially now that he's learned he's standing among an elite S-ranked adventurer party. Even though Lloyd had already given up on himself, Yu wasn't about to let him go, practically begging him to show off some of his magic. Lloyd figured he'd just embarrass himself again, but reluctantly agreed anyway. Without making a big deal out of it, he casually summoned his staff using storage magic, but just that simple move made the entire team realize this guy might actually have some serious talent. Then effortlessly, and without even chanting a single word, Lloyd layered a bunch of enhancement spells onto everyone. At first, nobody really felt different, but when Yu gave her sword a casual swing, it sliced straight through a tree like it was made of paper, leaving them all speechless. Seeing their stunned faces, Lloyd quickly explained that he'd stacked multiple physical enhancements to significantly boost their strength because he figured a single spell wouldn't impress high-level adventurers like them. It was clear now that Clum's magic didn't even come close to Lloyd's skill level, but Lloyd himself still had zero clue just how ridiculously powerful he actually was. Lloyd nervously continues, explaining he deliberately used 5 separate enhancement spells at once, assuming that if he used only one simple spell, these elite, top-tier adventurers would find it disappointingly mediocre. After all, he knows very well they're the highest-ranked team around, and he desperately wanted to impress them. But looking at their stunned faces now, he immediately misinterprets their shock as disappointment, believing he's failed again. One of the cruelest things about constantly being looked down on is that it utterly destroys your self-esteem. And at this point, Lloyd's confidence is absolutely rock bottom, and after seeing their reactions, he instantly assumed he had disappointed them. Apologizing for wasting their time, he turned around to leave, genuinely believing he wasn't good enough. The team was still too shocked to speak, until Yu snapped out of it and desperately yelled for him to stop walking and come back. Lloyd paused and slowly turned around, surprised they still wanted to talk. Reluctantly, he told them about his past, how he'd been kicked out of the heroes' party for being worthless. Yu was stunned just hearing he'd been part of the heroes' team, but Lloyd downplayed it again, insisting he wasn't that great and recommending they stick with their original mage instead. They tell Lloyd all about Clum's situation, that she's actually a solid mage, and how she's been taking care of her sister Sylvie, who fell terribly sick. Clum used to balance adventuring and caring for Sylvie pretty well, but lately she's been exhausted, and it's seriously affecting her performance. Last time they fought, Clum spaced out and almost got everyone killed. Even though the team assured her everything was cool, Clum still chose to resign to avoid endangering them. Usually, the team handles quests fine without a white mage, but for A-ranked missions, they definitely need one. Yu adds that aside from Clum being valuable on missions, she's also a really close friend, so they're genuinely worried about her, and the whole party agrees, looking visibly concerned. Lloyd notices this and asks if they see Clum as more than just a teammate. When they say yes, Lloyd can't help but think how lucky Clum is for having teammates who truly care about her, unlike the jerks he used to work with. Curious, Lloyd asks about the specifics of Sylvie's illness, and they explain she's gradually turning into a magic stone. Lloyd recalls studying magic stone sickness with his master, who once confirmed that the condition could actually be reversed. Realizing he might genuinely be able to help, Lloyd asks Yu if they could visit Clum right away. Soon, they're at Clum's doorstep. She greets them, surprised by the sudden visit, but invites everyone in. They sit down, and Lloyd immediately asks about Sylvie's condition. Clum explains how she and Sylvie used to go on adventures together, but during one particular mission, Sylvie got hurt. Clum wasn't there at the time, and only found her sister after she had already been injured. Lloyd asks for more details, but Clum decides it's easier to just show them and leads them into Sylvie's room. As soon as the door opens, Lloyd senses overwhelming magical energy. Clum then gently pulls back the covers, revealing Sylvie's limbs already solidified into stone, and she tells them that eventually Sylvie's entire body will become stone. Lloyd quickly speaks up, confidently saying he can cure Sylvie. Clum looks doubtful, reminding him that she already consulted several top-level mages, and none of them could do a damn thing, so she seriously doubts a regular white mage like him can help. Unfazed, Lloyd calmly asks if Sylvie's injury occurred inside a cave, and Clum looks at him in shock, confirming it. Lloyd then inspects the area where the injury began and immediately confirms his suspicion. Sylvie's body is turning into stone because it's being invaded by a powerful magical energy from that cave. Clum is still doubtful, but Lloyd tells her his master assured him the method would work. Yu gently encourages Clum to trust Lloyd, so she finally agrees to let him try. Lloyd takes a deep breath, pulls out his staff, and casts a powerful spell, feeling noticeably drained by the effort. He explains that he's cast a spell specifically designed to suppress the excess magical energy overwhelming Sylvie's body. By controlling the overflow, he can then heal her directly. Right after, he activates a second healing spell, and Clum stares at him in astonishment, pointing out that the magic he's using definitely isn't ordinary. Lloyd reluctantly admits it's a special kind of healing magic that drains more of his strength, but still insists it's nothing particularly special and keeps going. Yu turns to Clum, asking her opinion on Lloyd's power. Clum can't deny that the magic Lloyd is performing goes way beyond the ordinary. She's amazed he can cast two complex spells simultaneously and still manage to maintain his focus and strength. Just then, Yu excitedly points out that Sylvie's body is slowly returning to normal. Overwhelmed by joy, Clum rushes over, holding Sylvie's hand tightly as the stone gradually disappears. Everyone watches in awe, relieved and elated at the incredible recovery. Clum is deeply grateful but confesses she can't rejoin the team, explaining that once Sylvie fully recovers, they're planning to resume adventuring together as sisters, and she promises they'll celebrate properly later to thank everyone. Clum warmly assures Lloyd that the team is in good hands with him around, but Lloyd quickly says he hasn't actually joined the party yet, leaving Clum stunned by his lingering self-doubt. That evening, the party gathers for dinner, and Yui enthusiastically recounts Lloyd's amazing performance and how he miraculously saved Sylvie. Despite Yu's sincere compliments, Lloyd still shrugs it off, convinced it wasn't a big deal. Yu finally tells him to stop downplaying his achievements, reminding him how incredible he was back there. Still, Lloyd can't shake the feeling of disappointment and quietly apologizes for not convincing Clum to return to their party. But the teen reassures him that's not a priority right now because tonight they just want to celebrate together. As they begin talking excitedly about the future, Lloyd reflects on the harsh treatment he received from the hero's party compared to the genuine kindness he's feeling now. Feeling genuinely valued for once, he finally gathers his courage and asks if he can officially join their party. The team is momentarily stunned, since Lloyd previously seemed hesitant, but they quickly break into smiles, admitting they've wanted him on the team since the start. And with mutual enthusiasm, Lloyd officially becomes part of the group. Afterward, they throw a celebratory dinner for Lloyd, encouraging him to eat to his heart's content since they're covering the entire bill. Lloyd eagerly dives into the food as if he's never eaten anything decent before, thoroughly entertaining his newfound companions. They tease him a bit, asking if he's truly that hungry, but Lloyd enthusiastically replies that the food in this city is unbelievably tasty. This catches everyone off guard again, since local cooking has a pretty normal reputation. However, Lloyd insists that compared to what he grew up eating, even these average dishes seem amazingly delicious. Intrigued, Ewan now wants to know about Lloyd's upbringing, so Lloyd shares that he grew up with his mentor, who mostly cooked whatever grew in her backyard. She'd sometimes pick random wild fungi, and other times she'd just roast meat from creatures she hunted, handing it to him without adding any spices. Lloyd says that thanks to those meals, he taught himself how to cook, but even his best recipes never tasted as amazing as tonight's dinner. At this point, Yu completely loses interest in food and grows increasingly fascinated by whoever trained Lloyd in magic. She eagerly asks Lloyd to reveal more about his mentor, and the rest of the group jumps in equally interested. Silica wonders if his mentor is also a white mage, and Lloyd says she's actually more of a battle-focused mage, since there'd often be random explosions whenever she practiced alone. Silica finds it incredible that someone who wasn't even a white mage managed to train Lloyd this perfectly, and he wholeheartedly agrees that Merlin's skills are unmatched. Silica enthusiastically says she'd gladly train under his mentor for a bit, but Lloyd cuts her off immediately, warning her that she'll absolutely regret those words if she ever finds out the reality. After chatting a bit more about Merlin, the party moves on to plan their next quest, and Yu asks Dagus to brief Lloyd about their upcoming assignment because she's horrible at explaining things clearly. Dagus tells Lloyd that their objective is taking out monsters that keep ruining nearby farmland, and Silica adds that different kinds of monsters have strangely grouped together into one big swarm. Lloyd is hearing something like this for the very first time, and Dagus acknowledges that it's unprecedented even for them, but insists that they should prepare accordingly. Out of nowhere, Cross comments that since they're facing so many opponents at once, he and Yu will have a rough time because fighters specialized in melee combat aren't suited for large mobs. Yu nods in agreement, saying they'll have to rely heavily on Silica this round since she can cast spells that hit multiple targets, but even Silica's worried because spells covering large areas tend to drain mana rapidly. Yu then turns to Lloyd and asks if he knows offensive magic, and he responds that he can perform beginner-level spells, though their effects aren't all that unique. Dagus then shifts focus to discussing their battle plan, saying he and Yu will lure the creatures into one spot so Silica can blast them simultaneously. Cross will defend Silica and Lloyd, whose main roles will be healing and support. Once they're done, everyone returns to the inn for some rest, but Lloyd starts heading off in a different direction. Dagus quickly stops him, asking him where he's wandering off to, and Lloyd awkwardly explains that he's too poor to afford a room at the inn. Without hesitating, Dagus tosses him a pouch that contains more money than Lloyd has probably seen in his whole life combined. Lloyd gets extremely embarrassed, protesting that he absolutely can't accept it, but Dagus calmly insists it's not charity, since he's planning to deduct that amount from his pay anyway. Lloyd can't say no now, so he gratefully accepts, promising Dagus he'll do everything possible to earn back every coin. The following day, everyone assembles outside the inn, and Yu is the last to show up. She glances around and asks why no one has their bags, and they're all quick to tell her that Lloyd stored their luggage with his magical inventory, meaning they don't have to bother carrying anything. Yu immediately jumps on the chance as well, and Lloyd swiftly stores her belongings in his magical inventory. Yu and Silica begin showering him with praise for this incredible skill, but Lloyd humbly tells them he's happy to teach everyone how it's done. They're all stunned because none of them have seen anyone else besides Lloyd use this kind of magic, but he assures them it's quite simple to master, even though expanding its storage space will take some effort. After that, they set out on their quest, and along the way, Lloyd learns firsthand just how important it is to keep the mood light on these lengthy adventures. They reach their planned camping spot much earlier than expected since nobody had to drag around their heavy gear. Once there, Lloyd retrieves everything from his inventory, allowing the group to quickly pitch their tents. Now that the tents are ready, Yu decides she wants to jump in the nearby river and mess around, but Dagus immediately reprimands her, reminding her that they still need to gather firewood and food first. Lloyd happily offers to handle firewood duty, and Yu excitedly thanks him for making their lives easier. She then pulls Silica along with her toward the river for a quick bath, while Lloyd heads into the nearby woods to find some dry branches. And while collecting the branches, Lloyd notices some berries he loved eating when he was a kid, and decides to gather a few for the others, when suddenly he hears Yu yelling in panic. He immediately rushes toward the source of the screams, discovering a massive snake-like beast ambushing the uncovered Yu and Silica, who are utterly defenseless against it. Without a second thought, Lloyd leaps into action, striking the creature to distract it. Taking advantage of the opening, Yu and Silica dash toward the riverbank, and Lloyd waits just long enough for them to quickly cover up with towels before throwing them their weapons. He swiftly casts 2 enhancement spells on them, and Yui instantly charges forward, slicing the beast cleanly into 2 pieces with a single powerful swing. Surprisingly, the monster's severed head still has some fight left, prompting Silica to warn Yu and Lloyd to step back as she launches a fireball toward it, obliterating it in a single blast. She's startled by her own strength since her magic usually isn't this destructive, completely unaware of Lloyd's buffs. Afterwards, Yu thanks Lloyd sincerely for bailing them out, and casually asks him to store her sword away again, when out of nowhere her towel slips, giving Lloyd an unexpected view of her hidden secrets. Both of them immediately freak out, resulting in Lloyd getting slapped across the face, despite it totally not being his fault. Anyway, after they return to camp, Lloyd decides to show the group how to use the magical storage skill. He instructs everyone to imagine opening a space between their palms, but nobody has a clue what he's talking about. With Silica's encouragement, they try anyway, but instead they just end up awkwardly doing Naruto's Rasengan training. Lloyd feels embarrassed and starts worrying he's a terrible instructor because they aren't getting it, when suddenly Silica whispers storage and instantly manages to create a magical space. At that moment, everyone finally understands that unlike Lloyd, they can't perform spells silently, but as long as they say an incantation, they might figure it out eventually. After practicing for a bit, Silica successfully stores her staff, while everyone else struggles hopelessly. At night, while the others are asleep, Lloyd and Yu take the first watch shift together. Yu quietly moves over and sits next to Lloyd, telling him how grateful she is that he joined their team. Lloyd modestly responds that since he didn't have a job anyway, he's the one who should thank her, Then, recalling how fiercely determined Yui seemed to be about completing this specific mission for their client, he asks if there's a particular reason she's so passionate about finishing this quest. Yui explains that when she was young, her hometown was attacked by creatures, and she ended up as the only one left alive. So when she heard about this particular quest, she immediately jumped at the chance because she wanted to protect others from going through what she experienced. Suddenly, Lloyd interrupts her, quietly telling her to stop talking because he senses monsters nearby. Yui instantly switches to alert mode, grabbing her weapon, while Lloyd urges her to quickly wake the others. The entire group soon prepares to confront the swarm of spider monsters, but seeing how many there are, they realize retreating would be smarter right now. They cautiously start backing away, but unfortunately, Yui accidentally steps on a stick, and the snapping noise alerts the creatures. Everyone immediately sprints away, but the spiders swiftly catch up, cutting off their escape. The spiders begin shooting webs from their butts, and the party manages to block the first wave of attacks, but one of the spiders successfully wraps up Silica's staff and snatches it away from her. And soon the spiders trap the whole team inside a silk cage, causing panic to set in. Lloyd says they need to halt the spiders immediately before they attempt to fight back. He rapidly casts buffs on each teammate, then tells Yu to start the attack. She jumps into action, slicing through the web cage, allowing Cross to retrieve Silica's staff. At the same moment, Yu charges at a spider, deflecting its sticky spray and swiftly slicing off its legs. Then she skillfully surfs on another spider's web stream to close the gap toward the second spider, cleanly severing its legs as well. Lloyd then signals Silica and Cross to jump into the battle. Silica creates several flaming orbs, and Cross fires his arrows through them, igniting the spiders with flaming projectiles. With the fight concluded, Lloyd realizes he'd just given out orders despite being the newest person on the team. He quickly apologizes for stepping over the line, but Daggers reassures him that he actually did a great job and shows natural leadership skills. The rest of the team agrees wholeheartedly, encouraging Lloyd to keep taking an active role in guiding them during fights. By the next morning, everyone has gotten pretty good at using the magic storage skill, managing to carry their luggage easily, and as they continue on their quest, Lloyd can't help but wonder about the real reason the spiders showed up here. Several nights later, as Lloyd stands alone keeping lookout, his thoughts repeatedly wander back to those spider monsters. He can't shake the feeling that they should have spent more time investigating them. However, before he can ponder this more, Yu and Silica quietly approach him from behind, softly asking if he intends to handle tonight's watch all by himself again. Lloyd quietly nods, and the girls exchange a concerned glance because he's been pulling these all-nighters for days. They suggest that he rotate shifts with someone else, but Lloyd insists he's okay, saying he'd rather everyone else conserve their energy in case a fight breaks out. Yu opens her mouth about to lecture him, but Silica quickly steps in, gently asking Yu to respect Lloyd's choice. Still, she softly tells Lloyd to speak up if things start getting overwhelming. At the same time, from their tent, Cross and Daggis quietly watch the scene, uneasy about Lloyd's stubborn determination to shoulder the burden alone. The next morning, they continue their journey, and during a brief rest, Lloyd quietly activates a detection spell to scout for nearby monsters. He's relieved when he senses nothing, but suddenly Yu rushes over, asking what he's up to. Lloyd explains about his scouting magic, a spell that lets him detect monsters and other potential dangers in the area. Yu looks genuinely surprised, admitting it's the first she's ever heard of such a spell. Lloyd modestly downplays it, mentioning that its range isn't that impressive, but at least it gives them some kind of early warning. Yu grows even more worried now, realizing Lloyd is still taking on the full responsibility of protecting their surroundings, but he assures her again that he's fine and doesn't need any help. At night, Lloyd once again keeps watch on his own. Nearby, Yu sighs, murmuring that it feels like Lloyd doesn't trust them at all, even though they're supposed to be friends now. Silica gently reminds her that everyone has their own pace in warming up to people. She suspects Lloyd might have some past trauma that makes it hard for him to rely on others. She also guesses that Lloyd can't see how incredibly talented he really is, which pushes him to overcompensate by working too hard. Yu grows curious about Lloyd's past, but Silica reassures her softly, saying he'll open up to them when he's ready. At the same time, Daggis quietly approaches Lloyd, asking if he can lend him a hand with something. Cross offers to take Lloyd's place on watch for now, and Lloyd agrees. Following Daggis to the edge of camp, Lloyd watches as Daggis skillfully sets up a tripwire alarm that'll warn them if any monsters get too close. Lloyd is genuinely impressed by the setup, and Daggis smiles warmly, reassuring him that this alarm will handle the scouting duty, so he can finally get some bedtime. Lloyd quickly brushes off Daggis' suggestion, insisting there's no need and confidently claiming he can do a better job than the alarm. Daggis suddenly turns serious, confronting Lloyd directly, asking if he truly trusts the party. Lloyd hesitantly assures him that he does trust them, but Daggis firmly points out that his actions tell a completely different story. Lloyd is instantly hit by flashbacks of Merlin and his former team leader, both always calling him inexperienced or useless. He quietly admits to Daggis that if he doesn't push himself hard enough, he might end up causing trouble for everyone else. But Daggis surprises him confidently replying, "Then go ahead and cause some trouble." Lloyd is caught off guard, completely confused by his words, and Dagus patiently explains that the entire reason they formed a party was to handle challenges together, things that no one person could handle alone. Everyone messes up sometimes, that's why they have teammates. He gently but firmly urges Lloyd to start depending on his companions, and for Lloyd, it's the first time he's ever heard such a comforting idea. Dagus finally persuades Lloyd to get some rest, and later that night in the tent, Lloyd finds himself smiling softly as he realizes he actually has people he can lean on now. The following day, he nervously tries putting this new idea into action, shyly approaching Yu to ask if she'd mind helping him fetch water. Yu eagerly agrees, thrilled that Lloyd finally asked for help. Meanwhile, at a distant mansion, a noble named Michelle is receiving a suspicious report from a shadowy black mage. The mage informs him that he's successfully planted magic stones exactly where Michelle instructed. Michelle smirks in satisfaction, convinced their plan will now unfold smoothly. The mage adds that their previous schemes have conveniently scattered most of the high-ranking adventurer parties, making sure no one can meddle. However, the mage cautiously warns that the hero's party remains active, potentially posing a threat. Michelle dismissively remarks that the hero's party only moves on direct orders from the king anyway, and even if they interfere, he confidently believes that the hero alone won't be enough to stop what's about to unfold. Back in the forest, Lloyd and his group start feeling uneasy because the area seems suspiciously empty of monsters. Lloyd decides to expand the range of his search spell, quickly detecting a large cluster of monsters about 10 kilometers ahead. Cross comments that the monsters must be dangerously close to the farms they're supposed to protect, but before Lloyd can elaborate further, Yu interrupts in disbelief, asking Lloyd if he's seriously able to detect monsters 10 kilometers away. Lloyd casually confirms it, causing Yu to lose her mind because just the other day he told her his range was limited. Lloyd defensively argues that 10 kilometers really isn't that far, making Yu practically scream at him in frustration, but the other party members hurriedly calm her down, reminding her to stay focused on the real problem they're facing right now. They sprint urgently toward the source of the monsters, only to find the creatures already invading the farmlands they were supposed to protect. Everyone freezes momentarily, stunned by the sheer size of the massive wolf pack. However, Lloyd is even more concerned because this is the sole location where he could detect monsters, and he can't help but wonder anxiously where the rest have vanished to. The others also find it suspicious, knowing that monsters typically never abandon their territory. While they're all baffled by the strange situation, Cross spots something unusual at the very center of the wolf pack. The rest of the party can't see clearly since their eyesight isn't as keen as his, prompting Lloyd to quickly cast a spell that enhances his vision, allowing him to zoom in clearly. With his newfound telescopic sight, he immediately notices an odd black stone amidst the wolves. Lloyd swiftly shares this enhanced vision with the rest of the party, and soon everyone can clearly make out the strange object. Dagas immediately comments that the object resembles a magic stone, while Silica anxiously remarks about the ominous black aura surrounding it. Lloyd thoughtfully suggests the black aura might be mana leaking from the stone, and soon realizes that the mana's presence is remarkably similar to that of the beast folk. He suddenly recalls Merlin once telling him that beast folk have a unique magic capable of controlling monsters, and the stone they're looking at seems to be doing exactly that. Without wasting another second, Lloyd rapidly recasts his search spell, and this time he senses another enormous wave of monsters quickly closing in on their position. He now fully understands that this mysterious magic stone is the root cause of their current crisis, though the motive behind this strange attack still remains unclear. The other party members start to panic, thinking their best bet might be to retreat, but Yu firmly refuses, arguing passionately that if they flee, the monsters will ruin the crops and the villagers will lose everything. Dagas reluctantly agrees with her, recognizing that escaping safely in such chaos would be nearly impossible anyway. Silica, however, openly doubts their odds of winning such an overwhelming battle. Just then, Lloyd boldly steps forward, confidently declaring that they should fight and promising they can succeed if they follow his plan. He decisively states that their primary goal must be to eliminate the magic stone first. He turns to Cross and urgently asks if he can hit the stone with an arrow from their current distance. Cross hesitates, unsure if he can actually shatter the stone from so far away, but Lloyd quickly reassures him that it's enough as long as he lands the shot. Cross takes careful aim, and Lloyd swiftly applies 3 powerful enchantments simultaneously to Cross. Empowered by these spells, Cross's arrow effortlessly smashes the magic stone to pieces. Astonished, Cross asks Lloyd how he managed such an incredible feat, and Lloyd casually explains that he simply enchanted him, the bow and the arrow at once, calling it standard procedure. The others, however, stare at him in stunned disbelief, knowing perfectly well that ordinary white mages could never enchant multiple targets simultaneously like Lloyd just did. Right then, they notice the wolves beginning to tear into each other. With the magic stone shattered, their original savage instincts return. Lloyd had anticipated this outcome and notes with relief that the first stage of his plan has worked. However, he grimly acknowledges that the massive horde approaching them is still advancing relentlessly. Within moments, the monster horde bursts forth from the forest, Heading straight for them, Silica bravely steps ahead of the party to confront the incoming onslaught alone. The creatures rapidly close in, getting dangerously close, but Lloyd patiently waits, holding his breath until the very last second before urgently signaling Silica to unleash her attack. In an instant, she conjures a blazing tornado of fire, incinerating every monster caught in its path. The party is momentarily stunned, as none of them have ever witnessed Silica wielding such devastating power before. Lloyd urgently instructs Silica to continue bombarding the enemy with alternating wind and fire spells, then quickly turns his attention toward Cross. Thanks to Silica's fiery assault, thick clouds of smoke now obscure the battlefield, blinding the aerial monsters, but also concealing them from view. Lloyd swiftly establishes a telepathic link with Cross, synchronizing their senses, and precisely communicates the position of each flying enemy through his heightened search ability. With Lloyd guiding his aim, Cross flawlessly shoots down every single airborne threat without missing once. Lloyd immediately races back to Silica, eager to initiate the final stage of his strategy. But as he reaches her, she anxiously admits that her mana is entirely depleted. Unfazed, Lloyd calmly transforms himself into a living mana reservoir, effortlessly transferring his energy into her. He collapses suddenly, having given her too much mana too quickly, but manages a weary smile, reassuring Silica not to worry about him and urging her to cast one final spell to create rain. Following his advice, Silica gathers the mana he provided and casts her rain spell. A heavy downpour swiftly extinguishes the raging forest fire, effectively preventing it from spreading beyond control. However, the spell drains every last drop of her strength, and Silica collapses as well, and Dagus swiftly moves to catch her. Yu then praises Silica's heroic effort, promising that she and Dagus will handle the remaining stragglers. While the two rush off to finish off any lingering monsters, Lloyd and Silica gratefully take a momentary break. But soon after, Lloyd suddenly sinks to the ground again, frustrated at his own exhaustion. He mutters under his breath that he needs to push himself even harder because it's unacceptable to feel this drained after such minimal effort. A short while later, Yu and the others successfully eliminate the remaining threats. Yet as they regroup around Lloyd, he urgently insists they can't rest yet. He feels a dreadful premonition in his gut and warns the party they must immediately hurry to the nearby city. Lloyd's instincts scream at him that the real target all along has been the city of Ishtar, and this attack was merely a diversion. Everyone's standing there looking totally dumbfounded, and Lloyd just casually pulls out a crate full of mana potions from his storage dimension. He gulps one down and explains that this entire mission was actually a trap meant to lure powerful adventurers away from Ishtar, making the city easier to attack. Cross sneers at the idea, saying Ishtar still has the heroes' party and the whole Night Order guarding it, so it's hardly defenseless. However, Dagus admits Lloyd's logic does make sense, so Yu chooses it's smarter to be cautious, announces they're heading back right away. Lloyd then finishes gulping down his potion, casually buffs the whole party, and tells Yu they need to get going immediately. Without another word, he sprints off toward the city, leaving everyone dumbfounded at how ridiculously fast he's moving. As Yu rushes to catch up, she realizes she's suddenly faster than freaking Isho speed. The rest of the group follows quickly behind, hardly surprised when Lloyd calmly mentions he boosted their speed specifically to help them make it back as fast as possible. While Lloyd's squad races back, the Count is sitting comfortably at his desk, casually sipping on what I think is just red wine. General Gulist walks in, asking how the preparations are coming along, and the Count smugly reveals that everything is nearly set for the attack. He credits their success entirely to the girl Gulist kidnapped. Apparently she's proven incredibly useful. The Count chillingly remarks that he still has many twisted experiments planned for her, and he'll have all the time in the world once Ishtar falls. Gulist can't shake the feeling that the Count's plotting something seriously messed up, but decides not to question it too deeply after all. The Count was the Demon Lord's trusted right-hand man, and his skills definitely aren't to be underestimated. At the same time, the girl is trapped in the Count's jail, and every now and then he brings her magic potions to forcibly drain her magic and produce those beast-attracting magic crystals he's been using. It's happened so often that by now she's completely lost the will to resist. Back with Lloyd's crew, they've just crossed a massive grassy field and are on track to reach the city in record time. But Silica grows visibly worried about Lloyd's condition, convinced it must be insanely exhausting to maintain speed enhancement magic for this long. Lloyd just brushes it off, clueless about her concern, explaining that once you master it, you can drastically reduce the mana drain from enhancement spells, meaning it's hardly even affecting him anymore. The others immediately ask Lloyd what he means by getting used to it, so he casually explains that when he was younger, Merlin straight up dumped him in the middle of the freaking forest and abandoned him there until he could find his way home by himself. Of course, being just a white mage, Lloyd couldn't exactly kill any monsters, so all he could do was constantly spam support magic on himself and desperately run away to survive, and over time, he'd experimented with every kind of magic possible, eventually finding his way home alive. The others stare at Lloyd in stunned disbelief, horrified by what he endured, but he innocently shrugs it off, genuinely convinced that such harsh training is pretty standard and nothing special. Yu and Silica glance awkwardly at each other, realizing someone has to break the news to him that responsible adults don't usually abandon their kids in monster-infested forests as a training exercise. But despite their gentle explanation, Lloyd somehow interprets their words to mean normal children actually endure even worse training, which only reinforces his absurd idea that his own skills are embarrassingly inadequate. Once they're all rested up, Lloyd reapplies his speed enhancement magic, and they continue rushing towards the city. Suddenly, Lloyd freezes completely mid-run, causing everyone behind him to crash spectacularly into each other. Irritated, they demand to know why he stopped so abruptly, and Lloyd explains he just sensed something suspicious up ahead with his scan. Though he's not sure exactly what it is, Silica immediately asks if it's another monster, but Lloyd doubts that. It's more like a hunter tracking prey, but he admits he can't be certain without seeing it for himself, so he urges everyone else to continue toward the city while he investigates further. Yu instantly objects, arguing Lloyd has zero clue what he might run into, and if it turns dangerous, there's no way he can handle it alone. Lloyd reluctantly agrees she has a point, and everyone quickly jumps in, reminding him they're teammates and should face danger together. Lloyd is genuinely touched, grateful for their concern about his safety. Lloyd then leads everyone straight to the mysterious presence, and now that they're closer, he can confirm without a doubt there are demons inside the building. Hearing Lloyd casually mention demons, Yu nervously asks if he's absolutely sure, since demons usually stick to the megocracy and aren't supposed to set foot in this continent's 3 major nations. Demons have spent ages trying and failing to invade this place, so their sudden presence here is extremely alarming. Everyone stares at Lloyd like he just said the dumbest thing ever, because everything you mentioned was basic common knowledge, yet here Lloyd was, looking as clueless as a newborn baby. Lloyd awkwardly admits he doesn't actually have memories from his childhood, and in fact, the earliest memory he can recall is the day Merlin took him in, and by then, the war had already ended. In any case, Dagus suggests they hurry back and report the demons to the city knights immediately, and Lloyd agrees, but he still wants to gather more intel first. The others immediately warn him that getting any closer now would be seriously risky, and Lloyd totally gets that. However, the mana he senses from that house is almost identical to the magic crystal that attracted the monster horde earlier, meaning these demons must be directly tied to whoever's plotting against the city. With stakes like that, Lloyd believes gathering more info is worth the risk, and Yu backs him up wholeheartedly. She passionately convinces the others that as adventurers, it's literally their job to protect people, and right now, these demons are definitely a threat. Plus, if they're lucky, stopping these demons here might completely prevent the attack on Ishtar altogether, so it's worth a shot. But when they carefully approach the house and peek inside the window, they're shocked because it's totally empty. Confused, Lloyd quickly performs another scan to pinpoint the exact location and discovers the demons are actually hiding underground, and from the looks of things, they're definitely cooking up some shady ritual down there. Lloyd urgently asks Silica if she can use earth magic, since that's the only way they'll get underground fast enough. Silica confidently says she's got it covered, so Lloyd immediately buffs the entire party again. Silica then swiftly uses her sandpit spell to create a massive hole beneath their feet, and seconds later, they crash right on top of the demons in the middle of a ritual they weren't supposed to see. The demons are completely stunned, angrily demanding to know who these intruders are, but Yu calmly holds her sword to one demon's face, threatening to end him unless he spills exactly what they're plotting. But before he can even speak, another demon jumps in, launching rocks at Yu using earth magic, forcing her to shift focus just long enough for the first demon to make a run for it. As he darts past his savior, Cross quickly puts a bullet through another demon's chest, causing the fleeing coward to bolt through the doorway, shamelessly abandoning his comrades. He locks the door behind him, hoping that'll stop Yu from chasing. Then the remaining demons stupidly try sneaking up on Yu while she's distracted at the locked door. Cross, however, steps in effortlessly, shooting both in their thighs and leaving them easy pickings for Yu to slice apart. With the immediate threats neutralized, the group regroups quickly to hunt down the escaping demon. Behind the door, that demon frantically wraps the kidnapped girl up in a cocoon using magic, desperately hoping to transport her away unnoticed. However, seconds later, Yu and the others burst through the door, forcing him to immediately bolt upstairs. The party chases after him, but seeing that he's gaining distance, Lloyd orders Yu to sprint ahead and cut off his escape route. He instructs Silica and Dagus to flank from both sides, neatly boxing him in. Eventually, the demon has nowhere left to go, and Lloyd bluntly tells him to give up because he's got questions, and he damn sure expects answers. But the demon stubbornly refuses, throwing one last desperate lightning spell in an attempt to wipe them all out. Lloyd anticipates it perfectly, casting magic shields around the group, effortlessly deflecting the attack, and the reflected lightning brutally pierces straight through the demon's own chest, finishing him off instantly. After that, Lloyd quickly grabs the cocoon and carefully unravels it, shocked to discover a beast girl trapped inside. For now, they gently carry her back back into the cabin, laying her down in a bed to let her rest. With all the demons dead, they're completely out of suspects to interrogate, leaving this girl as their only hope of answers. But from her current state, she's definitely not waking up anytime soon. Dagas anxiously asks Lloyd if he can heal her, and Lloyd calmly replies he'll give it his best shot, raising his staff gently over her body to begin the healing spell. Silica watches in amazement at Lloyd's ridiculously efficient healing magic, prompting Lloyd to casually admit he made a few improvements during his free time. Yu, trying to be crystal clear, bluntly tells Lloyd that normal adventurers don't go around improving their spells. In fact, tweaking magic is practically unheard of, so what Lloyd's been doing is borderline legendary. Lloyd genuinely had no clue that adjusting spells was so special, considering Merlin used to constantly drag him into refining her own magic. At least this time, Lloyd finally understands Yu's point and doesn't play down his talent like usual. Not long after, the girl begins stirring awake in the bed, and the second her eyes open, Yu eagerly bombards her with questions. There's obviously a lot she needs answered. The poor girl barely manages to respond under this interrogation, but at least gets to share that her name is Claire, so it's at least progress. Lloyd then gently steps in to handle the questioning himself, calmly asking Claire if she knows why the demons imprisoned her. But Claire remains silent, so Lloyd switches tactics, gently explaining they're adventurers who came to protect a nearby farm that had been repeatedly attacked by monsters. And he explains that those monsters were drawn there by a powerful magic crystal he found on the farm, which emitted clear beast magic. Lloyd recalls learning that certain beast folk can control monsters through magic, so he softly asks Claire if the magic responsible for the attacks was hers. Claire hesitates briefly, but finally admits that her magic indeed powers those magic stones, but the demons forced her to do it. Now that everything's out in the open, Lloyd and the others realize the demons definitely plan to use the monsters to invade Ishtar, the continent's gateway city. They agree to hurry back immediately to protect it, deciding to bring Claire with them too. Elsewhere near the city, some guards just discovered another magic stone that the demons planted nearby. Unfortunately, it's far too late because monsters have already started flooding towards Ishtar, and if things keep going this way, the entire city will soon be overrun. Back with Lloyd's group, they pause for a brief rest when Lloyd suddenly senses a huge wave of monsters heading straight for the city, with an even bigger army following close behind. Realizing they can't possibly handle all those enemies alone, Lloyd makes a drastic call. He tells Yu and the others to rush ahead, warn the knights, and protect the city, while he stays back with Claire, planning to use her powers to stop the monsters right here. Elsewhere in the city, Alan's frustration is hitting its limit as he struggles to find anyone capable of replacing Lloyd. Every so-called white mage who applies can barely manage 2 consecutive spells before running dry, whereas Lloyd could rattle off 5 without even getting tired. Rena carefully suggests that maybe Lloyd was simply on a different level, but Alan's pride refuses to entertain the idea. In his mind, the issue isn't his expectations, it's the sorry state of the talent pool. To him, every white mage in town is somehow even more hopeless than Lloyd ever was, so he vows to keep cycling through recruits until someone with real value finally appears. Right then, a member of the Imperial Guard steps in carrying bad news. Scouts have spotted a massive force of monsters outside the walls, more than 10,000 by count, and the king wants the hero party to help defend the city. Alan is still convinced his team is the strongest thing walking, and he accepts the request immediately without thinking it through. The guard exhales in relief, assuming Alan must have a solid plan tucked away if he can answer so casually. Then once the guard leaves, Sheena asks if he is really sure because 10,000 monsters is not a number you shrug off. But Alan waves off their concern because he is more focused on the shine that comes from fulfilling a royal request, already picturing the acclaim and the bragging rights, certain this will cement him as the strongest person in the entire kingdom. Just listening to him chase the glory, the rest of the party trade looks because they can already tell this is not going to end well for them. Out in the forest, Lloyd and Claire have already located a second wave of monsters gathering among the trees. If this group links up with the horde marching toward Ishtar, the city will not survive the collision. Lloyd says they need a way to stop the swarm before it joins the main force, but Claire hesitates. She asks if there is any method to break the advance without slaughtering the creatures. Even though demons were the ones pulling the strings, it was still her power that summoned them here, and she cannot shake the responsibility. Lloyd sees how much she cares and promises to craft a plan that saves the town while keeping monster casualties to a minimum. To make it work, he is going to need her help, so he asks if she can channel her magic to send the creatures back to their natural habitats across the region. Claire says it can be done, but with that many creatures packed into one spot, she is not confident she can manage it. Lloyd asks if the outcome would change if he boosts her with his support magic, and Claire admits she is unsure, yet she is willing to try. She starts the spell to speak to the monsters, opening the channel, but before the magic can take hold, something in the woods cuts across it. Until they track down whatever is causing that disturbance, she will not be able to push the spell any further. Back at the guild, Alan summons every adventurer still inside the city, then soars as soon as he sizes up the room. Sheena explains that all A rank and higher parties were dispatched on missions already, so what they have on hand is B rank and below. It is not ideal, but she tells him to quit talking down to the people who actually showed up. Alan keeps treating the B ranks like expendable pieces on a board, and the room starts to boil. But before it turns into a brawl, the branch manager strides in and orders everyone to cool it. They are here to fight the monster horde, not each other, and there is no time to waste on ego. Alan agrees to drop the disrespect and pivots to strategy. He then announces that all mages should open the battle with their heaviest attack spells and erase 10 enemies each on the first volley. While those mages recharge their mana, Alan and the rest of the fighters will rush the line to buy time, and they will keep looping that pattern until the field is clear. On paper it sounds workable, but the adventurers push back immediately. They do not have that kind of firepower. At best, their strongest cast might down a single monster, so asking for 10 per person is pure fantasy. Alan starts calling the room incompetent, but Mia cuts in and says she could not meet that target either. Alan demands an explanation, so she says that a while back her spell potency fell off a cliff, and ever since then her magic has been less efficient across the board. It is not only her. Sheena, Lulu, and Rena have all felt a sharp drop in output, and every one of those issues began the day after Lloyd walked away from the group. Alan unloads on the room, claiming everyone has been faking their skill levels, but Rena fires back that nobody lied to him, not once. In fact, the very same drop in performance should be hitting him too. If he had even half-heartedly kept up his training, he would have noticed he has gotten weaker by now, but he has been too busy soaking in the spotlight of being the hero. She says it plainly so everyone can hear it. He does not deserve the title, and with a whole crowd of low-rank adventurers watching, Alan burns with embarrassment and tries to prove himself by throwing a full power punch at Rena, but she stops it with one palm like it is nothing. The entire guild saw the action, so Alan's image is toast, especially after he spent the last 30 minutes calling everyone helpless. He bolts from the hall red-faced, and the adventurers are left whispering about how someone like him ever got labeled a hero in the first place. They understand they cannot rely on him to save the day, so talk turns grim. The monsters will not wait long to strike, and people begin wondering if abandoning the city is their only option. But Rena steps in before panic takes over. She tells everyone to breathe and says she will stay and she will fight, and her confidence steadies the room. But even so, she admits the situation is ugly. First thing, she asks whether anyone has seen a man named Lloyd recently. And while Rena is searching for him, Lloyd is still deep in the forest with Claire. Together they uncover a magic crystal hidden under the canopy. It is the same kind of device Lloyd has encountered before, and the foul energy pouring off it is almost certainly what is jamming Claire's spell. So unless they destroy this thing, she will not be able to reassert control over the monsters. And the bad news is that there are likely a dozen or more of these crystals seeded throughout the woods, and tracking each one down will be a nightmare. Lloyd agrees that sweeping the entire forest would take forever, so he asks Claire whether she can home in on the crystals, since they are piggybacking on her power. Claire says she can feel the signature if she is within a reasonable distance, but the forest is vast, the signal range is short, and that makes pinpointing their locations effectively impossible without getting close first. Lloyd says that will not be a problem, since he already has the perfect approach in mind. Before Claire can even get a question out, he lays sensory sharing and enhancement on her, widening her range until every magic crystal in the forest lights up to her senses, with their exact positions streaming straight into Lloyd's mind like a living map. He follows by casting invisibility on the both of them so they can slip through the woods without drawing a single glance from the monsters, and Claire is left speechless because he did all of that without even breaking a sweat. Working under that veil, they ghost past the horde, and Claire begins purging the dark enchantment and neutralizing the crystals one after another. Back at the city walls, the adventurers have assembled and are bracing for the fight. The worry hangs over the crowd. Earlier, Rena explained that the real engine behind the hero party's success was Lloyd, and he is the reason they made it this far at all. If he mattered that much, the others ask why he was thrown out of the hero party, and she admits it came down to their own short-sightedness. The hero title went to their heads, so every win got chalked up to their personal strength while the grind of Lloyd's support work was ignored. She says their only realistic shot is to ask Lloyd for help, but the guild manager informs her that Lloyd is not inside the city at the moment. Soon after being expelled, he linked up with an S-rank team and left on a monster subjugation run. For an ordinary traveler, that trip would take several days, but Rena reasons that with his support magic, he can compress the travel time significantly, so if fortune tilts their way, he might already be on his route back. With no better options on the table, Rena tells the gathered adventurers they are betting everything on Lloyd making it back in time to save them. The adventurers trust her judgment and steady themselves to hold the line, yet they cannot shake that cold knot in their stomach that comes from staring at what they are up against outside the walls. Rena's battle plan is simple. The archers will open by loosing a storm of arrows to shave down the swarm, and when the monsters funnel into the freshly dug trenches, the shield line locks shoulder to shoulder to hold them back while the mage squad unleashes everything they have. Keeping that tempo will be rough. No coffee breaks here. but running this pattern should let them hold the line until Lloyd and his crew make it back. Later that night, Yui and the others close in on Ishtar, and thankfully Lloyd's speed enchant is still ticking, so after a quick breather and a stretch they can keep running without burning out. At the same time, Lloyd and Claire track down the final magic stone hidden deep in the trees, and once they neutralize it, the monsters finally revert to normal behavior. Bad luck on the local roster though, because this patch is crawling with high wolves and blood panthers, and those two species have an old grudge, so the instant they snap back they start tearing into each other. In the chaos, one beast slams into Claire, the sudden jolt strips away the invisibility Lloyd cast on her, and a dozen feral eyes swivel to her spot. She freezes hard, blanking on the fact that her gift lets her command monsters, and she is a heartbeat away from becoming lunch. But Lloyd cuts in and yanks all their focus to himself, pulling the pack away and bailing her out. Back at the city walls, things are not pretty. Even though the defenders have held the horde off for hours, fatigue is chewing through the ranks and gaps are opening in the formation. It will not last at this rate, but right as hope starts to slide, a colossal fireball screams across the field. You and the rest finally hit the battlefield, and the night lights up like a festival, minus the fun. At the same time, on Lloyd's side, he keeps weaving through claw swipes and fangs, staying just out of reach, because under these conditions that is about all he can safely do. Claire is stunned by how fast he moves, but she cannot figure out why he is not swinging back, since someone at his level should be able to flatten monsters like these without breaking a sweat. Claire then remembers that Lloyd promised to keep monster casualties low for her sake, which explains why he refuses to strike back. She will not let him take the hits because of her, so she gathers herself, calls up her powers, and begins to sing. One by one, the beasts ease down, their fury cooling, and they drift back into the forest like the fight never started. Lloyd mutters that he would have loved that about 5 minutes earlier, but he is impressed all the same, so he asks what she just did. Claire says she simply used her power to politely ask the monsters to return to the woods, and they listened. With the nearby horde freed from the mind control and the path briefly clear, Lloyd tells her they need to move, and they push hard to get back to Ishtar before the next wave hits. Inside Ishtar, the battle is still brutal. Even with Yu's party on the field, they have barely made a dent in the swarm. Weapons are running out, mana is scraping bottom, and it feels like this really is the end. Rena keeps calling for grit, telling everyone not to fold because there has to be a way to claw out a win, but the front line is already breached, and people are being wounded across the field. They hang on until morning, and by then every layer of defense has been smashed. The guild manager whispers that this might be the city's last stand. Then before the monsters can flood the streets, a clear voice rises from the cliff by the forest. It is Claire, her song boosted and carried far by Lloyd's magic. Soon, the combined effect halts the monsters in their tracks, and instead of pressing the attack, they begin calmly retreating back into the forest, lifting the immediate threat and saving the city from collapse. When the last creature is gone, Claire lets the song fall away, and her knees nearly give out, but Lloyd catches her and holds her steady. They are both relieved that the city was spared, if only for now, because the disaster is not finished as they see a group of golems walking toward the walls of Ishtar. Elsewhere, Count Michel lounges in his fortress, fully convinced that Ishtar has already been crushed under the monster horde. But his confidence shatters when a courier bursts into the office, delivering an urgent message. Michel expected confirmation of the city's fall, but to his shock, he heard that the monsters suddenly pulled back into the forest. All except the golems, because those remained unaffected by Claire's song. Lloyd immediately suspects demonic interference, and with the golems now closing in to cause destruction, he casts a speed buff on Claire and urges her to hurry with him back to the city immediately. As they weave past the lumbering golems, the pair are spotted, so Lloyd orders Claire to pull back to slip the incoming stone fist. One glance tells him these brutes are enhanced, which means putting them down will not be simple. With the city's trench looming, he slips an arm around Claire's waist and vaults clean over in a single breath. The soldiers on the ramparts gape, since a leap that far while carrying someone is not remotely normal. Then again, they have heard the stories about Lloyd's ridiculous enhancement magic. Once across, Lloyd and Claire regroup with Yu and the others, and they all thank him for keeping Ishtar standing. He says the credit belongs to Claire, since her magic drove most of the creatures off, but the golems are still marching this way, so everyone needs to prepare. Right then, his knees buckle, and he collapses from sheer exhaustion, because he's been using enhancement magic almost non-stop for days, and even for him, it's too much. The others urge him to rest because he is overdoing it, but he says he cannot stop until the city is secure. Moments later, the guildmaster arrives, and since he is here, Lloyd asks him to look after Claire for now because her safety matters to him. The guildmaster nods, assigns a squad of knights to guard her, and swears to Lloyd she will be secure. With that settled, he is overjoyed that Lloyd returned in time, because right now Lloyd is the city's only hope. Lloyd freezes at the news for a moment, since he had been certain the hero party was still in town. Rena arrives in a hurry and informs him that Alan flat out refused to take part in the battle. Lloyd is incredulous, asking what sort of hero abandons his duty when lives hang in the balance, and Rena answers that someone like Alan never deserved the title in the first place. Right then he spots a nasty gash along Rena's arm, and without a second thought, channels healing magic to seal it shut. The Guildmaster marvels at how quickly Rena mends under Lloyd's spell, though Lloyd sways on his feet afterward, utterly drained because his mana is already running low. Rena says he did not need to strain himself just to patch her up, and he replies he could not leave her with a wound like that. She has also been wanting to apologize for failing to value everything he did for her, since he is the reason the hero party became strong in the first place. Lloyd tries to wave it off, saying he is not that strong, but Rena insists his support was indispensable. No one ever gave him credit, and she was complicit for not stopping Alan from tossing him out, so she offers a formal apology. At that moment, the alarm bells clang as the golems reach the walls. A few tumble into the trench, but many remain upright, and the guards surge forward to cut them down at once. Lloyd shouts for them to hold back because these golems are not ordinary, but the warning comes too late. A guard's blade explodes on contact with stone, and while he stares in shock, the golem hammers him to the ground with a heavy punch. The situation turns ugly, so Rena raises her shield and orders a full assault. Yet every spell and every arrow glances off the golem's rugged shell, forcing them to fall back as nerves begin to fray across the line. If they do not act fast, the city will fall regardless, so Lloyd tells Yu he will cast enhancement magic on everyone present. Yu asks if he can really manage that, because empowering more than 100 fighters sounds absurd, and he answers that he can handle it. Even so, in his current condition, he can only apply the buffs one squad at a time, rather than all at the same time. Lloyd then starts launching the spells, and the instant he finishes, the strength drains from his legs because his mana is perilously low. He reports to the others that he has placed a strength buff on every fighter at the front and a mana buff on each of the mages. He also layered enhancements on the 4 of them as well, but they need to move now, right this second, because he cannot promise the effects will hold long with him in this state. Yu nods, and as the golems grind closer, she climbs a tower and calls across the field that Lloyd has reinforced everyone, so they should be able to engage the enemy now. The soldiers struggle to believe he buffed the whole force that fast, so they hesitate. But then when one of them is about to be crushed, Rena charges in and absorbs the hit with her shield, and Yu drops from the tower and cleaves the golem clean in half. With that first one down, Rena lifts her shield and declares this proves Lloyd's enhancement magic works. Now that they have seen it, the troops recognize the surge in strength compared to a moment ago, and with Lloyd's support they might actually pull this off. Right then, Lloyd issues orders, sending Cross to assist the magic unit at the rear, while Daggers and Silica rush to the front lines. He himself is swaying on his feet, so a guard runs up, helps him stand, and guides him back to the fort to rest. Powered by his buffs, the adventurers tear through the golems one after another, and Lloyd cheers them on from a tower. Just as they are about to finish the final construct, the enhancements wink out, and the fighters are once again unable to harm it. It may be only one golem, but if nothing stops it and it reaches the city, the havoc will be enormous. Yu then sprints into its path to block it, and just as the strike comes down, Rena shoves her aside so Daggers can take the punch. They cannot hold it like this for long, so Lloyd knows he has to act. His reserve is almost empty, yet he scrapes together enough power to enhance Yu's blade. Yu catches on to what Lloyd just pulled off, so she asks Daggers and Rena to cover her for a heartbeat. So the pair raise their shields while Yu readies her sword, and as they absorb the golem's punch, she sprints up its arm and shears its head clean off. With that decisive cut, the city of Ishtar is safe, and Lloyd finally exhales in relief because he can rest at last. Back at Michelle's castle, the general storms in after learning the beast girl they had seized for their scheme has escaped, and he demands answers. But Michelle had already realized the assault failed, knew the general would blow his top, and quietly packed up and fled. The general rages, trashes the office, and then decides he will kill the one who meddled with his plans. Back in town, Lloyd wakes in an inn, and a moment later, Yu arrives to check on him. She is relieved to see him awake since he was so drained that he slept for a full day. His first act is to apologize because he blames himself for not being strong enough, but Yui is tired of how little he values himself, so she tells him to come along because there is something he needs to see. She then leads him to the front entrance, and when she opens it, Lloyd finds a massive group waiting for him outside. He panics and shuts the door because he has never had such a large crowd chant his name before. Yu explains they are here to express their gratitude to their savior, and that it is disrespectful to shut a door in their faces, so he should go out and welcome them correctly. But by the time she opens it again, Lloyd has already leaped out a window and is circling the block to avoid the crowd. Elsewhere at Merlin's home, Willie drops by to visit. Just as he reaches for the handle, a huge explosion erupts. Merlin steps out and Willie tells her that blasting the doorway is no way to welcome a guest, but she says she mistook him for an intruder. Willie does not mind since he was not hit, and Merlin is still impressed that he always manages to slip through her spells without a scratch. Then when Willie steps inside, he spots Thor and Lily, who fought alongside him and Merlin in their hero days, and it has been ages since the whole group gathered like this. Merlin then asks if he has any updates on Lloyd, so he explains that Lloyd was actually dropped from the hero party some time ago. Merlin reels at the news and cannot grasp why the party would cast Lloyd out, but Willie tells her not to worry, since Lloyd is now with an S-Rank team and doing fine. Merlin is relieved, yet Willie adds one more point, saying that although he has never spoken with Lloyd directly, he has watched him long enough to conclude that Merlin's parenting methods might have been so freaking bad. Back in town, Lloyd stands on a rooftop as crowds pour through the streets looking for him, and he still cannot figure out what the hell is going on. Right then his friends spot him up there, and he asks why so many damn people are looking for him. They explain the crowd simply wants to thank him for saving the town, but Lloyd insists he does not deserve thanks because to him, he only did the bare minimum, and Yu tells him he is putting himself down again. He keeps setting impossible standards and beating himself up for no reason, so they all say he should have a bit more confidence. And for the first time, Lloyd actually seems to get their point. Back at Merlin's place, Willie says Lloyd is humble to a fault and has no real sense of his own strength, so it is a minor miracle that he found a team that would not exploit him. Merlin admits to herself she may have mishandled his training, though she only wanted to keep him from repeating her own damn mistakes. Back in the city, Lloyd finally decides to face the crowd, and people immediately start pouring out thanks for the boost he gave them during the fight. To them, that makes Lloyd the new hero of Ishtar, while Alan and his crew are in serious trouble now. Whatever was on his mind, refusing to help without any reason in the middle of a crisis automatically revokes his hero title, so his lofty status is gone. And of course his pride will not let him stay where Lloyd is hailed as the hero, so he tells everyone to pack up and leave at once, and the girls all trail after him with clear reluctance. The next day, Lloyd and the rest receive a summons to the Lord's castle, and when they arrive, they are all surprised to see Claire already waiting there. He asks if she was summoned too, but a few moments later the Lord appears and explains that Claire is actually an honored guest here. They take their seats, and Lord Abel informs them that Claire is the third princess of the Fours Empire, which means she is rather important. Lloyd and the others had no damn clue that Claire was royal, so the revelation hits hard. Setting that aside, Abel asks what they think of Claire's power now that they have seen it in action. Lloyd says it is incredible but also frightening, since in wrong hands it could unleash chaos, which is exactly why Abel says they cannot allow the demons to seize her again. The Empire will want to reclaim its princess soon, so Abel gives Yu's party a special assignment. He wants them to escort Claire to the royal capital Silphus, and while that would normally fall to the royal knights, doing so would draw too much attention, and Abel does not want to risk alerting the demons to her presence. It is obvious the demons covet Claire's power, and Lloyd is certain they will not give up easily, so he and the rest of the team agree to take her to the capital, and the next day they set out on their trip to Silphus. Afterward, while they were taking a short rest, Lloyd pulled out the map and noted that they were closing in on the next town. However, Cross was already at his limit, complaining under his breath about how insanely long this journey was taking because it had already been 10 days since they'd left Ishtar, and the capital still felt impossibly far. So Daedus reminded him that they had chosen the longer route on purpose, favoring safety over speed. Suddenly, Yu perked up with excitement and whispered something to Claire about the upcoming town where they were going to stay somewhere with hot springs. Claire blinked in confusion, clearly unfamiliar with the concept, and admitted she had only ever heard of them, but never had the chance to actually try one herself. That revelation stunned Yui, who insisted that Claire hadn't really lived until she experienced it. Cross quietly worried about how casually Yu was acting on a mission this critical, but Daedus offered a different take. He believed Yu's lightheartedness was her way of putting Claire at ease. Lloyd didn't quite follow at first, but it soon made sense when Cross pointed out that Claire likely wouldn't be comfortable unless everyone around her stayed fully focused and serious. Silica chimed in, saying that a little fun might be good for the princess, who rarely got the chance to explore or enjoy the world outside the palace walls. That realization gave the group a new respect for how thoughtful Yu's behavior actually was. When they finally reached the town, the first thing they did was follow through on Yu's plan and head straight to the hot springs. Yu and Silica slipped into the water without hesitation, clearly enjoying themselves, and they barely noticed that the place was oddly empty. Claire, on the other hand, stood by the edge nervously, still wrapped in her towel. She wasn't exactly used to sharing a bath and felt awkward. Yu and Silica reassured her that it was completely normal because they were all girls after all, and there was no need to feel shy. After some coaxing, Claire agreed to join them, but she warned them not to stare too much. A few moments later, Yu was doing exactly that, eyes locked onto Claire's figure. Claire was just about to ask what her deal was when Yu complimented her, saying her slender build was perfectly suited for royalty. But even with the praise, Claire still felt self-conscious, especially compared to Silica's legendary melons. Yu's melons wasn't exactly small either, but Silica teased that Yu had just gained weight recently. Yu gets flustered and stands to argue, but then she remembers all the meat and desserts she devoured over the past few weeks, and that clearly proves Silica's point, but she still doesn't like being teased for it though. And while that debate about who has a legit melon and who does not raged on, Dagus, Cross, and Lloyd were on the other side of the partition, casually washing each other's backs and hearing every single word echo through the bathhouse. While Dagus and Cross are doing their best to block out the questionable chatter echoing from the other side of the bathhouse, Lloyd's attention is elsewhere entirely. His mind is occupied with a much more serious concern, since the demons are clearly targeting Claire. It's only a matter of time before they try to strike again. A large-scale assault within the kingdom is unlikely, but the possibility of a small, elite infiltration unit is much more realistic. That means Lloyd needs to take precautions. Originally, the team was supposed to spend just one night in town before heading out again the following morning. However, Lloyd calls for a quick meeting and announces a change of plans, and he wants them to stay here for several days so he can prepare the defenses he has in mind. Dagus is quick to back the idea, mentioning that he's been meaning to upgrade his equipment anyway. Silica is also on board. She sees this as the perfect opportunity to refine and test some of her magical techniques. Cross doesn't care much either way and leaves the decision up to Yu, but with most of the team in agreement, Yu decides to delay their departure and give everyone the time they need to get ready. The following day, Dagus sets out early to check the local blacksmiths and weapon shops around town. Despite combing through the area for hours, he still hasn't found anything that meets his standards. As he strolls down one of the side streets, he spots Yu and Claire standing near a docked boat, looking like they're about to go sightseeing. But Yu waves him over and asks what he's doing. Dagus explains that he's been hunting for a new shield since his current one has seen better days, but none of the shops he's visited have what he's after. Claire then recalls seeing a rather run-down weapon shop tucked away in one of the back alleys. She warns him that the place looks sketchy, but it might still be worth checking out. Dagus decides to follow the lead and makes his way to the alley. When he arrives, the storefront is quiet, too quiet. It almost feels like the place is out of business, but when he steps inside, he immediately spots an array of finely crafted weapons on the walls, so he figures he must be in the right shop. Just as he's admiring the craftsmanship, an older man bursts out from the back and starts shouting. He assumes Dagus is one of the local punks who's come to stir up trouble like usual. Caught off guard, Dagus quickly reassures him that he's just here to browse and nothing more. After a brief pause, the shopkeeper realizes he's made a mistake, apologizes for the false alarm, and lets Dagus continue scanning the goods in peace. While Dagus was inspecting the lineup of shields on display, a group of Lotna thugs barged into the shop. Their leader, a guy named Karan, immediately started hollering for the old shopkeeper to show himself. As Karan glanced around, his eyes landed on Dagus. He raised a brow, clearly surprised to see someone actually browsing in this dusty old shop. With a smug grin, he shouted across the room, asking if Dagus was seriously here to buy something. Dagus, unsure what this crew was about, simply confirmed that he was here to purchase a weapon. The whole group erupted in laughter, mocking him like it was the funniest thing they'd heard all day. To them, any adventurer shopping here had to be bottom tier, but before Dagus can respond, the shopkeeper emerges and he looks absolutely furious. Karen threw on a smug grin and greeted the old man with a sarcastic question about how business was going, already knowing full well that he'd been sabotaging it for a while now. From the tone of their exchange, Dagus quickly realized that this wasn't just some random visit. These guys were deliberately harassing the shopkeeper. Not one to stand by silently, Dagus stepped forward. One of Karen's goons immediately warns him to back off, bragging that Karen's an A-rank adventurer and nobody in this town is strong enough to take him. That might have been true if there hadn't been an S-rank shield bearer standing right in front of them. But Karen clearly had no clue who he was dealing with, and kept on boasting about his rank like it meant he owned the place. Dagus looked him dead in the eye and asked why someone with that kind of title was bullying an old man. Karen casually explained that he wanted to buy a certain artifact from the shop, but the owner kept refusing to sell it, claiming Karan wasn't worthy of it. The artifact apparently could only be wielded by someone capable of unlocking its true power, and in the owner's eyes, Karen didn't make the cut. But Karen wasn't taking rejection well. With a cocky grin, he said if persuasion wouldn't work, he'd just beat the old man until he gave in. That was the last straw. Dagus stepped forward, calling Karan a disgrace to every adventurer out there. So one of the thugs snapped and swung a fist at him, but the punch was so damn weak that Dagus caught his arm mid-swing and twisted it behind his back with ease. And without wasting another second, he summoned his shield from storage and charged forward, slamming the entire crew right out through the front door. Karan is left stunned, completely blindsided because he thought Dagus was just some nobody. But Dagus calmly pulled out his S-rank adventurer ID and flashed it toward the group. Then he explained that he didn't bring it up earlier because flaunting your rank was pathetic, and he had no interest in stooping to that level. That shit makes them dumbfounded, and as Dagus shuts the door, they leave mumbling that he'll pay for this later. But the old man, after witnessing everything, made up his mind and said to Dagus that he had a favor to ask him. Back at the inn, Lloyd was deep in concentration, seated at the table surrounded by open books and glowing runes as he refined his magical techniques. Not long after, Yu and Claire returned from their sightseeing trip. Yu noticed his focus and asked what he was working on, so Lloyd explained that he was trying to enhance his support magic, though he was also thinking about branching out and learning a new type of spell, but he hadn't quite decided which one yet. Yu immediately suggested that he try learning offensive spells. Lloyd admitted that he considered it, but wasn't sure how useful that would be. In his opinion, Silica's attack spells were so refined that anything he could do would pale in comparison. And for once, Yu can't argue because mages like Silica are practically unheard of, and her combat spells are on another level entirely. At the same time, Silica herself was out in the nearby woods, pushing her limits. The recent battle was still fresh in her mind, and the thought haunted her. If Claire and Lloyd hadn't arrived when they did, things could have ended very differently. She hated feeling helpless and had no intention of being a liability again. Determined to grow stronger, she had been training relentlessly, working on mastering an advanced fire spell. The problem was, each time she attempted it, the spell collapsed mid-cast and exploded in her face. Still, she pressed on because failing was just part of the process, and she wasn't the type to quit when things got hard. Back at the inn, the group gathered for tea, enjoying a brief moment of peace. As they talked, Yu remarked that Silica might be one of the most gifted magic users she ever met. But what made her truly exceptional wasn't just her natural talent, it was her grit. Because no matter how complex or dangerous a spell was, Silica wouldn't stop until she had it completely under control. That same drive was on full display at that very moment as Silica continued refining the fire spell in the forest. And this time, her efforts paid off, and she managed to maintain the spell's form without it detonating. Elated by the breakthrough, she allowed herself a moment of celebration, but she got a little too caught up in it. As she stepped back triumphantly, she lost her footing on the slick rock beneath her. That one slip shattered her focus, and with it, the spell unraveled violently, and a massive burst of fire erupted through the trees. Thankfully, Silica escapes mostly unharmed, though her outfit's pretty much wrecked. She exhaled in relief that the surrounding forest hadn't caught fire, but she was frustrated with herself for letting her guard down like that. She usually paid close attention to her surroundings, at least in public, but when she was alone, she had a tendency to relax too much. She figured it was time to call it a day and start heading back, but just as she's about to leave, she hears rustling in the bushes, so her first thought is that it might be a monster, which would be bad news considering her mana reserves are nearly drained. But thankfully, it turns out to be just Dagus. Both Dagus and Silica were caught off guard seeing each other in the woods, so Silica questioned why he was out here, and he explained that the shopkeeper had asked him for a favor, which led to something unexpected. The old man revealed a legendary shield crafted by the famed artisan Raimons. The item called Aegis had a reputation for being nearly impossible to destroy and could withstand any strike, so Karen had been pestering the old man endlessly to get his hands on it. Dagus immediately sensed how special the shield was just by looking at it, so the shopkeeper added that it was extremely heavy, making it unusable for most adventurers. That's the main reason he rejected Karen's offers. He couldn't allow such a masterpiece to be mistreated by someone unfit to wield it. Not to mention, he found Kiran insufferable and wouldn't have handed it over to him even if he could lift it. With Dagus, though, it was a different matter, and the old man said he'd rather hand it over than see it wasted. Dagus was taken aback and asked if the man was sure about giving away something that valuable. The shopkeeper assured him it was fine, but under one condition. Apparently, strange blasts had been shaking the woods since the morning, and no one in town had the courage to go investigate. In exchange for the shield, he asked Dagus to look into it. Silica hadn't realized her magic practice had drawn that much attention, so Dagus pointed toward a massive crater left behind from her training, saying that kind of destruction was enough to make anyone nervous. Afterward, Dagus brought Silica back to the store, where she sincerely apologizes for all the trouble she caused. But the old man said it was no big deal, especially since she fixed the damage she caused. He then tells Dagus the shield is his to take, but Dagus wasn't sure he deserved it, since it was his friend who caused the disturbance, but the shopkeeper insisted. He said Dagus had earned his respect through how he handled everything. Later, when they got back, Dagus and Silica shared the day's events with the rest of the group. Dagus showed off the shield, and everyone was impressed that he managed to obtain such a rare item. And they were just as surprised that Silica had already mastered a powerful new spell, so Yu asked if she'd show them later. Seeing how far both of them had come in just a single day pushed Lloyd to want to improve himself even more, and Cross felt a little left behind since he hadn't done anything noteworthy. Yu told them there was no reason to rush because everyone would grow at their own pace. But for now, she announced it was time to eat, so she started pulling Claire and the rest of the group along to hurry up and go to the amazing restaurant she had found. The following morning, Cross strolls through the quiet town, deep in his own thoughts. Lately, he's been seriously thinking about what he can do to push himself further. He knows falling behind in strength isn't an option, but just picking up a different weapon or doing more soul leveling in the woods doesn't feel like it would make much of a difference, so he's left feeling uncertain about how to move forward. As he's walking, a young boy accidentally bumps into him. The boy quickly apologizes, but Cross brushes it off, saying it's no big deal. He then notices a guild tag hanging around the boy's neck and asks if he's registered with the Adventurers Guild. The boy nods, and when he learns that Cross is also an adventurer, his eyes light up with hope. He says he has a favor to ask and wants Cross to join his party. Ordinarily, Cross would have turned him down immediately, but the kid looks genuinely desperate, and Cross can't bring himself to say no. Plus, he has some free time, so there's no harm in seeing where this goes. The boy introduces himself as Lin and leads Cross over to the local Adventurers Guild to get things started. As they walk, Cross notices that Lin is equipped with a bow and arrows, which means he's an archer too. That only raises more questions because archers usually don't go solo, so why has Lin been running around without a team? His answer comes quickly because as soon as they enter the guild, people start whispering. Every adventurer there immediately recognizes Lin and starts murmuring about how unlucky Cross is. It doesn't take long to figure out why, because Lin's reputation as a complete disaster with a bow is well known, so no one wants anything to do with him. Lin sheepishly apologizes for not mentioning it earlier and admits that he's ranked E, so he understands if Cross wants to back out and leave him behind. But Cross just says that he's not going anywhere, and to lift Lin's spirits, he shares that he's also trying to find a way to improve himself. Lin takes that as a sign that Cross must be a fellow low ranker and happily declares that they're now rookie brothers. Cross doesn't bother correcting him because it's easier this way, and he simply suggests they check the quest board and pick something out. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the city, Yui is on the hunt for a dessert shop she heard great things about. She's excited, but also a little worried because all the sweets she's been eating lately have her concerned about putting on extra weight. And just as she's deciding whether or not she should indulge again, a loud commotion catches her attention from the right. Then she turns to see a snobby noblewoman shouting at a young boy for getting mud on her elegant dress. The young boy trembles as he apologizes, but it's clear this isn't about a muddy dress anymore. The noblewoman just needed a reason to turn him into a target. With a cruel smile, she commands her guards to execute the damned child, and he happily agrees. The bystanders all know this is wrong, and a few of them clearly want to step in, but no one dares. The woman belongs to the notorious House Wendy, a name drenched in fear and loathing, so standing up to her would only make them the next ones to be crushed. The guard then raises his sword, ready to cut the boy down, until Yu suddenly steps forward and yells for him to stop. The noblewoman spins around, absolutely livid, demanding to know who dares defy her command. Yu, however, has no idea who this lady is, and frankly she doesn't care. All she sees is a crusty, wrinkled, over-decorated hag who clearly enjoys tormenting the helpless, and Yu's not about to let that slide. Flustered and furious, the noblewoman snaps at her guards to kill Yu first, and without hesitation, they charge. Yu quickly tells the boy to take the chance and run while he still can. And as the guards close in, Yu reaches into her storage and pulls out her sword in one smooth motion. The men skid to a halt in confusion because they were certain she was unarmed just seconds ago. Normally, seeing someone pull a blade out of thin air would make you pause and rethink your life choices, but the noblewoman screams at them to keep attacking, so they obey. Meanwhile, Cross and Lin are out completing their first quest together, and it's taking out a group of red slimes. Cross figures this mission is low stakes enough that even Lin's tragic aim won't ruin it, so he casually pulls out his bow from his storage and prepares to let loose. Then he freezes because he almost forgot he's supposed to be pretending to be a newbie, and Lin just saw him use a storage spell. Thinking quickly, Cross quickly makes up a lie and claims it's just a basic little trick his friend showed him. With that awkward moment behind them, it's time to clear the slimes. Cross looses several arrows, each one cleanly piercing the cores of 3 slimes in rapid succession. Lin is blown away, calling him incredible, but Cross says he can't carry the whole mission alone, so it's time for him to give it a try. Fired up, Lin draws his own bow and lets a few arrows fly. Unfortunately, his aim is abysmal, worse than the average ranked teammate in a losing streak, so Cross realizes training Lin is going to be a long-term commitment. Back in the heart of town, Yud is still holding her ground against the noblewoman's guards. The woman looks on in disbelief, wondering how her trained men are struggling so badly against just one girl. It doesn't take long for murmurs to rise from the crowd, and people begin to recognize who she is. That's Yui, the sword prodigy who reached S-rank status at only 16 years old. Now that they know her identity, everything clicks into place. No wonder the guards haven't been able to land a solid hit. In fact, it's likely Yu's holding back to avoid seriously injuring anyone. Yu then turns to the noblewoman and calmly asks if she's ready to surrender. But the woman smirks because she still has one last move to play. She subtly signals someone in the crowd, and in response, a magic circle lights up beneath Yu's feet. In the blink of an eye, glowing chains erupt and wrap tightly around her, locking her in place. It's a binding spell designed to slowly sap her mana until she's completely immobilized, so with her movement restricted, fighting back is off the table. The noblewoman wastes no time ordering her men to finish Yu off for good. But before they can move, the loud chaos draws the attention of a woman passing nearby. Curious, she steps forward to see what's happening. She's not usually one to meddle, but seeing 4 soldiers ganging up on one restrained girl rubs her the wrong way, so she decides to balance the odds just a bit. She makes what looks like a single lazy step forward, and in the next moment, all 4 guards collapse where they stand. Yu is the only one whose eyes are fast enough to track what happened. In a flash, the woman had zipped behind all the guards, knocked them out, and returned to her starting spot like she'd never moved. She moved so fast it wouldn't be surprising if she'd stopped for T-mid-dash and no one noticed. Yu might hold back when it comes to killing, but this woman has no issue collecting heads if it comes to that, so when she shoots a chilling glare at the noblewoman, she immediately faints on the spot. With the scene calm once more, Yu thanks the stranger for stepping in. But there's something else she wants, and she asks if the woman would be willing to train her. Yu had seen how impossibly fast she moved, and she wants to learn how to reach that level. The woman seems surprised by the request and tells Yu that she's already extremely capable for her age, so there's no rush. But Yu insists because she has a reason, and she mentions a white mage in her party named Aloy, someone she deeply admires for his strength. So she wants to grow stronger so she can support him and never be a burden. At the mention of Lloyd's name, the woman's eyes widen. She realizes that Yu must be the leader of the group Merlin spoke about. As it turns out, the woman used to be a member of Merlin's old party. Her interest in Yu is piqued, so with a faint smile, she agrees to train her, at least for a little while. Back at the inn, Lloyd has been working himself to the bone, endlessly analyzing his spell formulas and trying to squeeze out every ounce of efficiency. His constant overthinking has the rest of the group growing concerned. They suggest he take a breather, reminding him that locking himself up like this isn't healthy. So Claire gently offers to join him for a walk through town, hoping some fresh air might help clear his mind. Meanwhile, Yu is off deep in the forest with the mysterious woman. The woman can't help but find it a little alarming that Yu so willingly followed a total stranger into the woods without a second thought. Yu, however, assures her it's not a problem because she's confident the woman means no harm. Still, she does admit she'd like to know her name. The woman hesitates, clearly reluctant to reveal her true identity, and after a brief pause, she settles on a fake name, Lilith. That long hesitation only makes her seem even more suspicious, but Yui is still convinced that Lilith is someone she can trust, and she's determined to learn everything she can from her. Elsewhere, Cross is currently giving Lin a crash course on how to properly handle a bow. After getting some feedback, Lin finally manages to land a hit just to graze, but it's progress, so Cross encourages him to aim for the core next time. Lin draws back again, and this time he actually pierces the core and destroys the slime. Cross is genuinely impressed because he had fully expected Lin to be a total lost cause, but the kid's picking things up way faster than he thought. Back to Yu's training, Lilith says the first task is simple: cut down a tree over there. Seems straightforward enough, until Lilith adds that Yu has to do it without moving her feet from where she's standing. Yu stares in disbelief, certain that has to be a joke, but Lilith steps up, coats her blade with mana, and in one clean slash, drops the tree from a distance. She explains that all Yu needs to do is pour mana into her sword and strike with full force. Inspired, Yu gears up to give it a shot herself. Elsewhere, Lloyd and Claire are sitting at the edge of a hot spring, snacking as they soak their feet. Lloyd admits he's grateful for the break. It's been nice to step away from all the spellcraft and unwind for a bit. But the subject of magic lingers in his mind, and there's something he's been meaning to ask Claire. He suspects that the spell she used to command monsters wasn't modern magic, so he asks her directly if it was ancient magic. Claire is caught off guard by the question, clearly not expecting Lloyd to have figured it out. Still, she doesn't deny it and admits that yes, the spell is from the ancient school of magic, and that's what Lloyd suspected. A spell like that couldn't have been developed with current-era magic theory, which brings him to his next question. Could she teach him, because he believes ancient magic could hold the key to furthering his own research? But Claire quickly shuts that idea down, telling him that it's just not possible. It's said that wielders of ancient magic are born only once every few hundred years. Only those with a natural affinity can handle its power, and anyone who dares to use it without the right talent suffers severe consequences. Claire tells Lloyd that there are even historical records of a man who once used ancient magic to save a village, only to lose his life from the backlash. With a firm tone, she warns him not to mess with forces that aren't meant to be wielded recklessly. Meanwhile, Cross and Lin have finally wrapped up their slime extermination mission. It took longer than expected, mostly because Cross still has to reload his bow manually, one of the many limitations of being an archer. But either way, the job's done. Cross tells Lin they should go gather the monster drops before they disappear, but then Lin suddenly spots a massive spider. That thing's a high-tier beast, and Lin immediately panics, saying they need to get out of there. But the spider is crawling toward the slime loot, and there's no way Cross is letting all their hard work go to waste. So he draws his bow and fires at the spider's head, but a single shot does next to nothing. That's when Lin gets a sudden idea and tells Cross to try rapid-fire shooting. Cross starts to argue that he can't pull that off, but Lin snaps at him to shut up and use his storage spell more effectively. Cross had never thought of it like that, but he's willing to give it a shot. He lets off a shot, then immediately summons another arrow using storage magic, completely skipping reload time, and he finally breaks through the spider's hard outer shell. Back in the forest, Yu has been training non-stop, working to master the mana-coded slash technique. She's poured everything into it, but she still hasn't quite nailed the execution. Lilith can see that Yu's giving it her all, but maybe she needs a little pressure to push her over the edge. So when a wandering panther lunges out from the brush, Lilith intentionally lets herself be targeted. With no time to think, Yu reacts on instinct and charges in to save Lilith, and in the heat of the moment, finally pulls off the mana slash, felling the panther in a single strike. She's thrilled she finally succeeded, but she's also completely drained, and moments later she collapses, and Lilith catches her before she hits the ground. That night, Lloyd and the rest of the team are gathered around the dinner table, but concern is growing. Yu hasn't returned yet, and it's starting to get late. Then suddenly, Lloyd hears something at the door, and when he opens it, he finds Yu passed out on the front step. And down the street, Lilith can be seen casually walking away into the night. The following day, the party is ready to set off again, but something's clearly bothering Lloyd. He's frustrated because while everyone else managed to learn powerful new abilities or advanced techniques, all he did was fine-tune his spell efficiency, create a few large-scale attack spells, and develop an original search spell. Somehow in Lloyd's mind, none of that seems as impressive as what the others accomplished, and frankly, the rest of the team is starting to lose patience with how little he values his own achievements. Far within the depths of the demon realm, the demon general returned in disgrace after his failed attempt to take over a human settlement. And with no victory to show, he was forced to face the wrath of the demon lord himself. The lord was angry that the army, which was meant to serve as the vanguard of their invasion into the human realm, had been squandered so carelessly. He regrets putting so much trust in the general, but at this point, there's no time to cook up a brand new strategy. So he orders the general to track down Claire immediately and restart the operation, and if he fails again, his title and authority will be stripped from him without hesitation. So the general agreed and accepted it to his heart. Outside the demon lord's castle, the general is clearly frustrated because he has absolutely no idea where Claire even is. That's when the count makes a sudden appearance, and the general is livid because he hasn't forgotten how the count abandoned him the moment things went sideways. The general almost lunges at him in a rage, but the count stops him, claiming he brings important intel. He reports that Claire is currently headed for the royal capital, escorted by a team of S-rank adventurers. On top of that, the count offers to assist in capturing her as a way to redeem himself. The general doesn't like it, but he's desperate, so he agrees to the proposal. Elsewhere, Lloyd and the crew are still traveling along the road, but nerves are clearly frayed. The moment a bunny hops out of a nearby bush, the entire party shifts into full combat stance. So Lloyd performs a quick area scan and reassures everyone that there are no demonic signatures nearby. The group collectively exhales, realizing they overreacted. Still, that jump scare rattled their nerves, so they decide to stop and rest for a bit beneath the shade of the trees. While they're sitting down, Yu notices Lloyd looking a bit too cheerful and asks him what's got him smiling, so Lloyd says that he just feels proud watching everyone's progress. Yu already suspects where this conversation is headed, so she presses Lloyd about his own progress. As expected, Lloyd says he's been doing his best, but he still thinks he needs to push harder so he won't drag anyone down. This is the 10th time they've had to remind Lloyd of the same thing, but the message never seems to stick. So Yu brings up the celebration they held for him back in town. Lloyd nods and says he understands he's not completely useless anymore, but he still feels like he should be doing more to match the rest of the team. That's when the others jump in, all of them insisting that the only reason they've been training so hard lately is because they're the ones trying to catch up to him. Lloyd tries to explain that his abilities aren't all that impressive when compared to those of his master, and even though the rest of the group doesn't know exactly who trained him, Claire can say with confidence that based on everything she's seen, Lloyd is easily the strongest person in the party. Yu tells him that it's time he starts recognizing his own strength, because if he keeps selling himself short, he'll never unlock his true potential in battle. Lloyd wasn't entirely tuned in for the start of that conversation, but he understands what they're trying to tell him now and promises that he'll work on believing in himself more moving forward. Elsewhere, the very person responsible for Lloyd's lack of confidence is currently wandering through the royal capital, searching for an old buddy. Her search brings her to the castle gates, but when she tries to walk in, the guards stop her right away because entry is restricted to authorized individuals only. Without missing a beat, Merlin uses a quick spell to trap the guards in a mild illusion and casually strolls into the castle. Eventually, she finds herself standing in front of an old library that immediately catches her interest, but it's not what it appears to be, just a visual trick. She walks toward one of the back walls and with a subtle wave of her finger, dispels the illusion covering it, exposing a hidden entrance. She raises her hand to knock, but before she gets the chance, Lowen steps out to greet her. She had already sensed that it was Merlin approaching because the scent of her mana gave it away. They smile and sit down together for tea, happy to see one another after so long. Lowen starts by updating Merlin that the son of the former demon lord has taken over the demon Ngocracy, but things have remained quiet for years, so the realm has enjoyed a rare stretch of peace. Merlin jokes that the Emperor must really be fond of Lowen if he's letting her turn the castle library into her personal study space, but Lowen says it just sort of happened after she started experimenting with some of Merlin's spells. Merlin laughs and says her magic isn't even worth copying, but Lowen immediately calls her out on that lie. She reminds Merlin that she's the original creator of the storage spell system, and she's able to cast dozens of spells without ever needing to recite a chant, all thanks to her own reverse engineering of ancient magic theory. Merlin says those techniques were just necessary back then to defeat the demon lord. But on that topic, she reaches into her bag and pulls out a tattered book. It's only half of the original grimoire, but she wants Lowen to inspect it and see if the sealing magic used to trap the demon lord is still intact. Lowen asks if Merlin believes the demon lord is planning another assault, but right now it's just a precaution and Merlin wants to be ready just in case. Back on the road with Lloyd and the crew, their pace has been steady, and at this rate they should reach the town of Schwartz within the next few hours, and from there it's just one more day before they arrive at the capital. Claire, however, seems a little on edge because the sun is already beginning to dip behind the trees, and if they don't make it out of the forest before nightfall, they could end up walking straight into a monster ambush. Cross tries to reassure her, pointing out that she can control monsters, but Claire reminds him that the spell takes time to activate, so if they're caught off guard, she won't be able to cast it fast enough. Not wanting to take any chances, Lloyd decides to perform a quick area scan just to confirm the surroundings are clear. But as he initiates the spell, he notices something strange. There's interference and his scan fails to activate. Just then, a dense fog begins to settle around the group, creeping in thick and slow, and it becomes immediately clear that this isn't natural. Silica steps forward and says she'll try clearing the fog with wind magic, but when she reaches into her storage to grab her staff, nothing happens because the fog is disrupting their magic. It's too odd to be a coincidence, so the group quickly concludes that this must be the work of the demons, and with visibility low and magic being suppressed, there's no way they can fight effectively in these conditions. So their best move now is to make a direct run to Schwartz and find safety there. At the same time in the royal capital, Lowen finishes her inspection of the ancient grimoire. She tells Merlin that it still holds residual mana, but all that's left is Sybil's magical signature. Merlin is actually relieved because that means there's still something to work with, and for her, that's enough. She then starts talking to Lowen about Lloyd, explaining that he might be capable of becoming one of the chosen, just like she and Sybil were in the past. What convinced Merlin was an incident from Lloyd's childhood. One day, he accidentally came into contact with the grimoire, and the moment his fingers touched it, the book reacted. That kind of reaction only happens when someone is compatible with its magic. So once Merlin realized what Lloyd was, she made a choice to raise him into someone stronger than either herself or Sybil. And to do that, she constantly threw him into challenges far beyond his level, pushing him over and over until he had no choice but to grow. It worked, but only as far as building his strength. Looking back now, Merlin admits that relentless training and tearing him down wasn't the right way to raise a child. Then someday, Lloyd couldn't take it anymore and left, and now he's part of an elite S-Rank group escorting the Beast Princess to the capital. It's been a long time since she's seen him, and truthfully, she misses him deeply. That's one of the reasons she made the trip to the capital herself, so when he finally arrives, she can see him again and talk to him face to face. Back on Lloyd's side, he and the rest of the group finally arrive at the city of Schwartz. But something feels seriously off. The whole city is strangely deserted. The fog is still lingering, though a bit thinner than before, and that gives Lloyd enough room to amplify Silica's mana, allowing her to finally summon her staff. With it in hand, she channels her wind magic and clears the rest of the mist from the area. But as the mist fades, a large group of demons is revealed, gathered right in the heart of town. Claire immediately spots Gilist among them, the same demon who had kidnapped her before, so it's obvious that he's here to take her back. Lloyd wastes no time and tells everyone to prepare for combat. He assigns Dagus to guard Claire, sends Cross up to the tower for ranged support, and leaves the rest of the team to handle Gulist's forces. Yu is the first to launch an attack, and her mana slash tears through several enemies in one swift strike. Silica wants to unleash a massive flame burst, but it's too risky with allies so close, so she resorts to shooting smaller fire blasts instead. But luckily, Cross has her covered, and he lines up a few clean shots and takes out more of the enemy troops. However, when he aims for Gulist, the arrows bounce off his body like they hit a wall. Yu moves in, hoping to take him down with another mana slash, but Gulist barely reacts, and he brushes past her and charges straight toward Claire. Dagus blocks the attack, holding the line, and Yu attempts to strike from behind. But when she swings her blade, it stops just short, like something invisible is protecting him. Lloyd quickly puts the pieces together and says that Gulist is using a layer of mana as armor, shielding himself from physical and magical damage alike. Gulist, impressed by Lloyd's quick thinking, assumes he must have been the one who disrupted the assault on Ishtar. Without warning, Gulist rockets into the air, aiming his next attack at Lloyd directly. But the height gives Silica a clean shot, and she fires her most powerful flame burst right at him. The explosion hits, but when the smoke clears, Gulist is still standing, barely scratched. His mana shield absorbed the brunt of it, and their chances of breaking through are quickly dwindling. More demons then begin to close in from all sides, surrounding the team. But then, just as things start to feel hopeless, a massive surge of ice bursts from the ground, and every demon in the area is frozen solid in an instant. The source of the spell turns out to be Therion the Ice Hero, and he calmly announces that he's come to protect Claire. Elsewhere, atop a nearby cliff, the Count observes the chaos unfolding below. He's starting to worry that things might unravel again, so he begins preparing another wave of mana-dampening mist to tilt the fight in their favor. But before he can cast anything, someone approaches, and it's Willie. The Count turns, shocked that anyone could track him this far, and asks what the boy wants. Willie smiles, saying the mist is a massive pain, and he's here to shut it down, straight from the source. Back in the city, Therion leaps down and lands beside the others. He takes one look at the group and bluntly says they're unbelievably weak for so-called S-rank adventurers. Still, he gives them some credit for at least keeping Claire safe until now. Claire rushes over to him with a bright smile, and when Lloyd asks who this dude is, she introduces him as her childhood friend Therion, the Ice Hero. The team is caught off guard hearing that he's an actual hero. Lloyd then wonders if that means Therion is the royal emissary who was supposed to escort Claire. But Therion says that he wasn't sent by anyone, and technically he isn't even supposed to be here. But he simply couldn't bear the idea of leaving Claire's safety in the hands of what he calls a group of third-rate adventurers. Claire scolds him for being rude to the people who literally saved her life, and because he's clearly got a soft spot for her, he eases up. At that moment, Gulist breaks out of the ice that was holding him, so Therion steps forward and tells everyone to stay back because he's handling this one solo. He then casts another ice spell at Gulist, but it barely phases him, so it becomes clear that if Therion wants to win, he'll need to take this fight seriously. Gulist, however, is intrigued because not only is Therion casting spells without any chant, but he's also using his own body as a magical conduit and not suffering from any backlash. Therion casually explains that his body is innately attuned to ice, and he's been that way since birth. But he adds that there's no need to go into more detail because Gulist won't be around long enough to care, and without hesitation he drops a massive block of ice directly over Gulist's position. And for the first time, Gulist is actually startled and dodges, confirming that he's not invincible. And that was all the confirmation Therion needed, so he followed up with a relentless barrage of icy projectiles, forcing Gulist to dart around the battlefield just to stay alive. But then Lloyd notices that Gulist is focusing energy into his fist, and it means that it's a condensed mana strike, a technique known to cause massive destruction. So he tries to warn the group to take cover, but it's already too late for Therion because Gulist has already closed the distance. So all Therion can do is counter with a reinforced frost punch. The impact creates an explosion so massive that Willie can feel the shockwave from the cliff. He didn't expect Gulist to have that kind of ace hidden away, and it catches him completely off guard. And while he's stunned by the sheer force of it, the Count uses the moment to slip away unnoticed. Back in the shattered streets of Schwartz, Lloyd checks on his teammates. Everyone is still breathing, and he can feel their consciousness, but there's no sign of Claire or Therion. He frantically starts scanning the area desperately, until finally, his eyes lock on something that chills him to the core. In the distance, Gulist is carrying Claire in his arms, boarding an airship that's already lifting off for a clean getaway. Therion then hauls himself back up and attempts to go after Gulist by summoning an ice platform beneath his feet. And to his credit, he gets impressively close to reaching Claire, and for a moment, it almost seems like he might make it. But the issue is clear that his ice wasn't built to handle that kind of altitude, so the platform begins to shatter, making Therion plunge downward as Gullist flies away into the sky above. Even someone like Therion wouldn't survive a fall like that, so Lloyd immediately tells Silica to cast an air cushion spell to break his fall. Thanks to Lloyd's fast thinking, Therion lands without a scratch, but Claire is still in enemy hands, and Therion is dead set on going after her again. Lloyd, however, blocks him and says the ship's already way too high and there's no realistic chance of catching up, so he might as well leave it to Lloyd now. Therion is more than a little insulted by that because he's not thrilled at the idea of Lloyd implying he could do a better job at rescuing Claire. But the others point out that Therion did just try and fail, so at this point, pretty much anyone might stand a better chance. On top of that, Lloyd's quick command is the only reason Therion didn't splatter onto the pavement a few seconds ago, so maybe a bit of humility wouldn't hurt. Reluctantly, Therion accepts that his options are limited and agrees to trust Lloyd, but on one condition: he had better not get in his way. Lloyd is genuinely grateful for the trust and tells him he's already cooked up a perfect plan to get Claire back. But for this plan to work, it's going to need a whole lot of Therion's ice magic. Elsewhere, high above in the skies aboard the airship, Gullist takes a moment to admire Count Michel's work, praising him for crafting such an impressive flying vessel. He even wonders aloud why this thing wasn't used to bomb Ishtar during their last campaign, so Michel explains that the ship is still in prototype stages, and in fact, this is its maiden voyage. That piece of info makes Gullist a bit uneasy, but Michel reassures him that everything is under control. There's no risk of any mid-air failures now that he's got the ideal power source for the engine, and it's a remnant of the last Demon Lord. That stuns Gullist, and he asks how the hell Michel got his hands on something like that. Michel goes on to explain that although the Demon Lord's body was destroyed after his defeat, a few pieces remained, fragments that still carried lingering magical energy. Michel managed to acquire one such fragment, and by studying its life force, he unlocked access to an almost limitless supply of mana. Gullist is absolutely horrified after hearing all that, realizing Michel is literally draining power from the soul of the previous Demon Lord, and the worst part is, the guy looks genuinely smug about it. Michel goes on to say that he's always wanted to witness all the strange and dangerous wonders of the world, particularly horrifying monsters, and the mere idea of having them completely under his command sends him into a full euphoric frenzy. Gullist just stares at Michel in disgust, thinking that this damn psycho's even more unhinged than him. But before the Count can say anything else outrageous, an alarm starts blaring. Both of them immediately turn their attention to the surveillance screens and see Lloyd and his squad rapidly approaching the ship. They were able to make it this far by combining Therion's ice platforms with Lloyd's newly acquired anti-gravity spell. The technique still has some limitations since its range is short, but it's the perfect tool for this particular job. Soon, the group successfully boards the ship, and without wasting a second, they demand that Claire be released, so Gullist rushes to the upper deck to confront them. He's shocked by how relentless they are, but he has no intention of giving Claire back, so he charges at them head-on. Lloyd, moving faster than expected, immediately casts a mass enhancement spell on the entire team, boosting everyone's abilities, and they scatter in time to avoid Gullist's incoming strike. However, when Therion counterattacks, his ice blade shatters upon impact. Gullist's mana armor is just as powerful as before, but Lloyd already anticipated this, and while Gullist is distracted, he discreetly casts a minor spell on him without being noticed. Then, Lloyd signals the group to attack, and they all charge in at once, forcing Gullist to repeatedly rely on his mana shield. But despite their combined effort, they aren't able to break through, and Therion ends up getting smashed into a wall. Gullist mocks them, laughing at how pathetic they are for thinking they could win with such feeble attacks. But Therion calmly replies that they never actually intended for those attacks to break through his barrier. Gullist is confused for a moment, trying to figure out what he's talking about, but decides it's irrelevant and lunges forward to finish Therion with a focused mana strike. Daga steps in and takes the hit for him, but then something unexpected happens. Gullist's arm suddenly freezes stiff and shatters into shards of ice. He's stunned by this development because he could have sworn Therion never landed a solid hit on him. But Therion explains that what he got hit with wasn't a traditional blow, it was delayed onset frostbite. Earlier in the fight, Lloyd had secretly cast a spell to dull Gullist's sense of pain, making it impossible for him to feel the creeping cold overtaking his body. And as for how Therion managed to land the frostbite in the first place, ever since the battle started, he had been quietly channeling a constant stream of cold air toward Gullist. Normally, the mana shield would have blocked it easily, but with Gullist so focused on deflecting the barrage of physical attacks from the others, he didn't notice that his body temperature was steadily dropping the entire time. Lloyd's trap had worked flawlessly, and now with Gullist missing an arm, he stood no chance against the rest of them. Lloyd demands that he hand Claire over immediately, But Gilist, realizing he's on the losing end of this battle, panics and makes a break for it, rushing down toward the lower levels of the ship. Once he gets there, he screams at Michelle to unleash every damn monster they've got locked in cages. The Count looks at him like he's lost his damn mind, and he literally warned Gilist that these beasts were unstable and that he hadn't perfected the control methods yet, so letting them loose now would be reckless. But Gilist is already messing with the cage mechanisms like he didn't hear a word. Lloyd's squad soon catches up and storms into the lower deck. Therian spots Claire and immediately yells for her release, but Gilist, instead of surrendering her, pulls the levers to unleash the captive monsters. He shouts at the creatures to attack Lloyd and his team, only for one of the snakes to snap at him instead. Just as Michelle had warned, these monsters weren't going to take orders from anyone right now. Fortunately, the Count had one emergency ace up his sleeve, a prototype override device hidden beneath the floorboards. He rips it out, slaps it on the deck, and triggers a magic crystal embedded in its core. The artifact sends out a sharp pulse that hijacks the monsters' minds and locks them under his control. The creatures freeze up for a second, and Therian uses the brief pause to rush toward Claire. He finds her locked inside a magical cage, and blasts it open by targeting the shell with his ice. But by then, Michelle is already shouting commands and setting the monsters loose on Lloyd's group, so escaping from the airship now would be extremely difficult. Everyone gets into a battle stance, preparing to fight their way out, but Claire steps forward and stops them. She says the monsters aren't to blame, and she doesn't want them hurt. She told them to trust her, that she would handle this herself, and then she began to sing a gentle, ancient melody imbued with her magic, hoping to soothe the beasts and calm the chaos. And just as expected, the beasts all freeze mid-step the moment Claire's melody hits their ears. It takes about half a minute for her magic song to fully kick in, and sure, Michelle could have tried stopping her, but instead he's too giddy about witnessing genuine ancient magic in real time, and all he can think to do is grab his device and record her voice. However, while Claire is still singing, the fragment of the Demon Lord begins to react, and in no time, the entire airship starts veering off course. Michelle notices something seriously off and rushes to troubleshoot the problem, realizing that if things continue like this, the whole vessel could crash. At first, he suspects the monsters Claire pacified might have caused the system error, but quickly rules that out. What actually happened was that earlier, when the ship first began jolting around, Gilist lost his balance and made contact with the compartment that housed the Demon Lord's fragment. Whatever interaction took place after that, one thing is clear: Gilist's brain just shut down completely. The Count quickly pieces it together. Claire's ancient magic must have triggered some kind of violent reaction in the dormant life force of the Demon Lord, and unless it's addressed, the entire ship might explode. He immediately yanks the fragment from the engine to shut the process down, and thankfully that stops the impending detonation. But now they've got a new problem because the fragment was powering the entire ship, and with it removed, the whole thing starts plummeting from the sky. Lloyd reacts quickly, using gravity magic to keep everyone anchored safely to the floor despite the ship nosediving hard. Still, that's not even the worst part right now because something really strange is happening to Gilist. He begins convulsing in pain, twitching violently, and then slowly rises to his feet, now completely vacant-eyed, and all he says is that he needs the Demon Lord's fragment. Michelle watches him for a moment, connects the dots, and realizes that Gilist must have turned into a vessel for the Demon Lord. Naturally, Michelle is intrigued because whatever happens next is bound to be fascinating, so he casually tosses the fragment straight toward Gilist's head. Within seconds, a dense field of dark magic engulfs Gilist's entire body, and the ominous energy begins sucking the life out of every monster in sight. Inside that shadowy sphere, the Demon Lord's essence starts merging with Gilist's form. Claire drops to the ground in horror, shaken by the agonized wailing of monsters being drained dry. A few seconds later, the energy bubble explodes in a flash of blinding light, and what emerges is a nightmare, a grotesque fusion of Gilist and every beast he absorbed. Lloyd instantly identifies it because he's seen the creature described in one of Merlin's books. This is a chimera, a nightmare beast that carries multiple souls and multiple lives inside a single vessel. Claire is crushed as she watches what's left of the innocent monsters fused into such a twisted form, while Count Michel is completely ecstatic because this grotesque creation has exceeded even his wildest expectations. Unfortunately for him, he wandered a bit too close, and the abomination promptly lashes out, cleaving him clean in half with a single slash. Even as his life slips away, the only thing Michel can focus on is how utterly fascinating this creature is. A moment later, he dies smiling, so Lloyd and the others can't believe someone could die looking so satisfied in a moment like this. But they don't have time to dwell on that because if they don't figure out a solid plan fast, they'll end up in pieces just like Michel. Elsewhere in the royal capital, Merlin and Lowen are strolling through the palace corridors. Lowen asks if Merlin plans to spend the night, but she declines, saying that without liquor she gets gloomy at night, so she's already planning to hit up a local tavern. Just then, they spot Willie standing in the corridor waiting for them. Lowen is thrilled to see him again after so long, but she wonders how he even made it past the security. Willie brushes it off, saying it's not important right now because he has something urgent to discuss. Merlin senses the seriousness in his tone and turns to Lowen, asking if they can head back to her quarters for a private talk. Back on the falling airship, the group prepares to take on the Chimera. Dagus steps forward to shield everyone, and Lloyd reinforces him with a protective spell. The Chimera lunges forward, and while Dagus does manage to withstand the strike without being torn apart, he won't last long under that pressure. And to top it off, the ship is still plummeting toward the ground, so it's only a matter of time before it crashes. While Lloyd remains strangely composed, the rest of the group is on edge. Cross is the first to speak up, saying they need to evacuate now. Claire, however, doesn't want to abandon the monsters that were unwillingly fused into this thing. Therian tries to explain that it's already too late, they're gone. Despite her protests, the group starts making their way toward the exit. But before they can escape, the Chimera positions itself in their path, cutting them off completely. With his patience wearing thin, Therian conjures a blade of ice and prepares to strike the creature down, but Claire stops him, refusing to allow any harm to come to it. Everyone understands that Claire still sees those monsters as victims, but damn it, this is life or death, because if they don't kill the thing, it'll kill them. You and Cross then give it everything they got, unleashing their most powerful attacks, but none of it works. And with only a few minutes left before impact, their situation grows more desperate by the second. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the recap and are excited for the next episode, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our daily recaps.